Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with our 2025 statewide epilepsy conference, United in Hope. My name is Michael Riddell. I am the education coordinator and camp director at Epilepsy Alliance West Central New York, part of Empowering People's Independence. And I'm going to kind of serve as MC for today's conference. We have some really great presentations and some panels and our keynote speaker. I'm really looking forward to that. So without further ado, I am going to start with our opening remarks from our coalition board president, Janine Garib.
Good morning and welcome to United in Hope, our fourth annual statewide epilepsy conference. I am Janine Garib, Executive Director of the Epilepsy Foundation of Northeastern New York and Chair of the Board of Directors of the Epilepsy Coalition of New York State. I am very excited to be here with you this morning, and I thank you all for joining us. The Epilepsy Coalition of New York State was founded in 1999 by Janice Gay. She also founded the Epilepsy Society of Southern New York. Its purpose is to promote awareness to public and private sectors of the state and deliver epilepsy services to people in need. The Epilepsy Coalition is made up of 6 organizations: the Epilepsy Alliance of West Central New York, the Epilepsy Foundation of Long Island, the Epilepsy Foundation of Metropolitan New York, the Epilepsy Foundation of Northeastern New York, the Epilepsy Society of Southern New York, and the Epilepsy Association of Western New York. Together, we cover all 62 counties in New York State. While we all have different programs and services, we share a common goal of improving the lives of everyone living with epilepsy in New York State. I would like to take a moment to thank my colleagues across the state for all of their assistance in planning today's event. It has been a year in the making, and we are thrilled to see these efforts come to life. I would also like to extend our heartfelt thanks to SK Life Science for their generous support of today's event. Their support has made it possible for us to provide this event at no charge to all of you. Thank you so much, SK Life Science. Whether you're joining us virtually from home or you're attending one of our local watch parties across the state, we are so glad to have you here with us today. It is truly inspiring to see our community come together. Families, advocates, healthcare professionals, and people living with epilepsy to learn, to connect, and to take action. It is estimated that 1 in 26 people will develop epilepsy in their lifetime, and more than 215,000 people are living with epilepsy across New York State. Every 4 minutes, someone in the United States is diagnosed with epilepsy. You are not alone, and we are all here for you. Today's conference is packed with insight, innovation, and inspiration. Together, we will explore the latest treatments in epilepsy and clinical trials, gain tools for navigating intractable epilepsy, and hear directly from individuals who are thriving from participating in self-management programs like PACES and Hopscotch. We're also especially excited to welcome our keynote speaker, Miles Levine. Miles is the writer and director of Under the Lights, a now full-length film that's changing how epilepsy is portrayed in the media. His story and the stories he tells are reshaping perceptions and amplifying the voices of our community. And finally, we will close the day with an advocacy panel focused on Seizure Safe Schools, where families and experts will share their efforts to create safer, more supportive environments for children living with epilepsy. This event would not be possible without our incredible presenters, our panelists, and the members of the organizations hosting today's watch parties. Thank you so much for bringing this conference to life across the state. To our attendees, We hope you leave here today feeling more informed, more connected, and more empowered to be part of a future where epilepsy is better understood, better treated, and better supported. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started.
Thank you, Janine. Thank you, Janine, for those great opening remarks. Just as a reminder for all the attendees that we're going to keep everybody on mute for the duration of the conference, and we will take questions through the chat for each presenter and each panelist. So if you have a question while the presenter is presenting, please feel free to put that in the chat. And Irene Rogers from the Epilepsy Foundation Long Island will retrieve those questions and ask them after they're done speaking. So without further ado, for our first presentation, we have Dr. Azadier from the Upstate University Hospital. Dr. Azadier is an associate professor of neurology, Upstate University Hospital. He is board certified neurologist who specializes in treatment of adult patients with epilepsy. He is the chief of epilepsy division and director of epilepsy and clinical neurophysiology fellowship programs at Upstate University Hospital. Dr. Azadier.
Hello, I'm Dr. Shahrami Zadiar. I'm an adult epileptologist, subspecializing in epilepsy and treating epilepsy and seizures. I work at Upstate University, and I run the epilepsy program there. So today talk is about epilepsy treatment pipeline and getting involved in clinical trials as a title. So we are going to talk about what clinical trials are, what new treatments might be available down the road for epilepsy, and how to get involved in clinical trials for those who are interested. So I want to first have a bit of overview of what it is a process of developing new treatments and particularly new medications or other types of treatment. So in order for a new treatment or a new drug to develop, there are several steps and several phases that I'm going to kind of explain them a bit. First is the discovery and preclinical research part. So this is before any clinical test on the medication is done. So during this phase, this is basically where the scientists work in their labs in different ways to look or work on different chemicals, compounds, or devices and test them in various ways. Sometimes they're just lab tests, sometimes may involve some sort of animal experiments. And in order to do that, again, is to find if the new treatment or potentially new treatment or device, whether it works at all, and if it does, if it's safe in as far as can be investigated in the lab environment. So after this phase, only treatments that show some potential for effectiveness and they're safe, then they move forward to human studies, and that's what the clinical trials are. The process of each phase, including the discovery and preclinical research, that can take several years before a treatment is ready for clinical trials. So that's a long process. I mean, this developing new treatments takes time and investment. So clinical trials are in most part divided in three main phases before they can be approved and come to basically market to be available to public for treatment. So phase one. Phase one is where participants are a small group of patients. Something can range between like 20 to 100 again. So there's no set number, but I mean, in that range, small groups. And these are patients who volunteer to be participating in this phase one of the drug development. So the focus of phase one usually is on safety, whether, again, there are any potential side effects, if there is anything that is considered to be concerning for the medication and things like that. So it focuses on safety. And also the other part is side effects, what potential side effects of the medications are potentially there. And when we talk about the safety and side effects, again, they're very related, but also we are in the lens of short-term or long-term side effects. So these are things that we pay attention to in phase one clinical trials. And also another part that is looked at in this phase one is how the medication is processed in the body. In other words, the kind of the scientific term of that is pharmacodynamic or pharmacokinetic of the medication. So pharmacodynamic, so how it's processed in the body, how it is metabolized, how does it get out of the body, what is the concentration of the medication in the blood after it's taken, what is the peak time of that concentration after medication is taken. So these are the questions that are tried to be answered in phase one of the clinical trials. And as I mentioned, these are usually involves either healthy volunteers or sometimes patients who volunteer to take these medications. But again, it's not uncommon to have healthy volunteers to participate in phase one. They don't necessarily need to have that specific disease that is the target of this medication. In our talk is focused obviously on epilepsy and seizures. So they don't have necessarily need to have seizures to participate. And then comes phase two. Phase two then goes, so after basically I guess a positive or a successful results are obtained from phase one, whether there's no major concern about the safety or side effects of them, and we have some information about how the drug is processed, then it goes to phase two. So in phase two, usually again, it's a larger group of participants, can range between 100 to 300, again, approximately. This is considered a larger group. So the tests that are done during this phase two is whether it checks the effectiveness of treating epilepsy and continues to monitor the safety of the medication. And also it determines what is the best dose of the medication. Usually in phase two, there are different arms of the participants, like they are divided into, let's say, just for an example, like medication that is tried, and the dose can be something between 20 milligrams a day to 60 milligrams a day. Again, just for an example. And then the participants are divided, for example, to three arms, whether like one takes 20 milligram, one group takes 40 milligram, one group takes 60 milligram, and then they will compare what is the effectiveness of each arm or effectiveness of the medication in each arm, and what is the potential side effects. Is the higher dose necessarily better? Is it concerns for more side effects with higher dose and so on? So these are questions that is tried to be answered in phase two. And then again, if the positive results are obtained in phase two, again, they're considered to be relatively safe and effective, then things move to phase three. Phase three then It's a large group of participants. It's usually over a few hundreds, sometimes can be a few thousands even participants, depending on the medication, depending on the goals of the study. This can change. And these are lots of times, depending again of the specific medication or device, but lots of times these are multi-central trials, meaning in different academic centers usually, or even sometimes private centers participate in these larger phase 3 studies. They enroll patients who might be interested and eligible for this study. So it's a multi-central across the country, different centers, or even sometimes it is a kind of a international clinical trial. So the different multi-centers from across the globe. Some centers from the U.S., some centers from Europe, some from Asia or different parts of the globe might be participating. So in phase 3, typically, the effectiveness of the medication is compared to standard treatments or to placebo. And placebo, again, as you know, it's a term that is used for basically quote unquote fake medication, or sometimes it's a common term to refer to that as sugar pills, basically. So they are uh, mm, pills that looks exactly like the original medication, but they do not contain the active ingredients. So there are some inactive ingredients, such as glucose or so on. So during this test, during this phase, more information is collected on effectiveness and side effects of the medications. And participants are usually again divided into different arms, similar to phase 2 that we talked about, maybe different arms of different doses. In this phase 3, typically one of the arms is the participants who are in the placebo arm or placebo group, and the other groups actually receive the medication, and then the effect of the medication is followed, whether the seizure frequency has changed, whether the severity of them has changed, and so on. So these information are collected. Lots of studies tried the phase 3 to be a double-blinded placebo-controlled study. So what does that mean, double-blinded? Meaning that both sides of this study are blinded to what the participant is receiving in terms of whether they're receiving the placebo or they're receiving the actual active ingredient pill. So the participant doesn't know which arm they belong to. The center that administers these pills, they do not also know. So this is why it's called a double blinded. So the participant is blinded to what arm they are into, and the center that administers this trial also is blind to that. I mean, this data is somewhere, like the sponsors of the trials usually, I mean, which is usually again for the medications manufacturers of the medications, or in terms of devices, manufacturer of the device, which is a bit different in terms of devices, how that double blind work. But they have that information. Again, some were safe, but the participant, let's say again, for example, I work again at Upstate. We are one of the centers that participate in some of these clinical multi-central or multi-center clinical trials. And when someone enrolls in our center and we give them a medication, we don't know whether they're receiving the actual treatment or the placebo. So in order, and then the reason for that is the studies that are blinded, or even better, double blinded, are more reliable, the results. because there's no effect of kind of the placebo effect is called. That's eliminated. So they're more robust results, more reliable. That's a kind of a standard these days. I think new medications by phase 3 that are double-blind control studies. So again, these are prior to approval. So, and then the results of these phases, or especially phase 3, these are the data and the information that are submitted by the manufacturers to FDA, Food and Drug Administration, to actually be reviewed and then eventually get approval. Again, the main question is the medication effective? Is it safe? So this is kind of a, again, graphic cartoon to summarize the phases of development of new treatments that we talked about. Again, the discovery phase, again, lots of lab work, maybe even gene identification, understanding the mechanisms of the disease and so on, identifying the target. Then the preclinical phase, again, that might be lots of, again, lab work, might involve some, lab work or animal models. Then it's submitted to a new drug application to FDA that, hey, we have this new medication. It's still in the preclinical phase. These are the data, and we want to start a clinical trial in human. And then FDA reviews that data and makes sure that they are relatively safe, and then approves the clinical trial. And then the clinical trial goes on phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, as we talked about. Again, as you see, as it advances, the participants become larger, and then this data eventually is submitted to FDA for approval. So that's what we were talking about. So FDA regulation and approval. Again, FDA carefully examines the evidence to ensure the treatment is safe and effective. The review process may include like the expert advisory committee meetings in the FDA. So there are, again, a large group of scientists, clinicians, experts sit on these committees and review the information. They may even ask the public for comments. So there's a public comment period. So they may release some prelim data information about that. I mean, it's not for every medication or every device, but it can include sometimes soliciting comments or opinions from public about some aspects of that treatment. And after reviewing that, FDA may kind of get back to the manufacturer submitting a party and ask them for additional data if they see the data is not enough or is not adequate enough to convince FDA. They may ask for more data. And in that sense, sometimes then the manufacturer needs to go back and do maybe another kind of phase 3, or kind of repeat that, or somehow collect some data that the FDA asked for them. So only after FDA approval, then the new drug or device can be prescribed to patients. Now, keep in mind again that these trials have their own specific criteria in order to be eligible to participate, and then I'll again mention that in some of the upcoming slides. All right. So why it is important in general, why are clinical trials important? So again, they're very essential for medical progress. Again, so new treatments, new mechanisms, new discoveries. I mean, these are essential parts in order to get new medications available to public and then to patients. For medical progress, it helps discover new and better treatments for epilepsy. They ensure that the new therapies are safe and effective before they reach the public. So clinical trials, again, and it provides that information. And without really clinical trials, we would not have the medications and devices that we have available to us today. So it's an essential part of medical advancement and progress. So what is the benefit if someone has that condition that the clinical trial is going on again? In our case today, that our focus of our talk is epilepsy and seizures. So what is the benefit of someone with epilepsy and seizure wants to participate in clinical trials? So first is one is access to new treatments that are not yet not only widely available, but not available at all in most instances. So these are new mechanisms, new discoveries that those patients might be interested in to try that as a first hand and get to new exposure because again all those phases takes years. I mean, as we talked, these may take years and years. I mean 10, 15, sometimes even longer for a medication eventually to get approval from the discovery point to the release point. So that's one advantage. During that clinical trial, their patients are usually, or participants are closely monitored. So they have several visits involved in these clinical trials, especially phase 3. So they get the medication, they come for frequent visits. During the visits, they are examined, they have lab works to do. So they're closely monitored and they have access to medical professionals basically readily available to them if they have any questions, if they have any potential side effects, anything that comes up, they can have a very close access to them. And last but not least is really a contribution to research and well-being of our community in general. So basically, it's an opportunity to not only benefit individually, but get back basically to community and help the research and advancing medicine and science for helping the patients better in the future. And in some clinical trials, may even some extra services or resources be available to participants, again, depending on what medication or devices in the trial, they may have extra advantage. But I mean, it comes also potentially with some disadvantage and risks from participating in clinical trials. Again, we know that new treatments may have some unknown effects or risks, but again, there's some preclinical work has been done in animal models and so on, so they have some sort of like an idea of what potential dangers or side effects might be before getting to clinical trials. Treatments may not work for everybody. Again, some participants may take and then participants may require more frequent, again, as we said, visits and tests and procedures may be scheduled once a month or every 4 months, 6 months. And also the duration of participation in phase 3 is typically between 4 weeks to 8 weeks. So during those times, few weeks, again, the patients are randomized to be in the placebo arm or the actual medication arm. But after that, 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks again, or 10 weeks again, depending on the medication. It's usually a limited number of weeks. Then there are lots of studies that is considered an open label extension. So that's usually, if there is some benefit during that randomized phase, which they don't know, again, we are blinded, they are blinded, if they are in a placebo arm or or the actual medication arm, if they see some effectiveness of that, then they can enroll in the open label extended study, which provides the actual medication. There's no placebo in that part. And they get actually the medication. Because again, the process of approval takes years. So they have access to that medication after that randomized phase 3 with open label extension or OLE phase. And another disadvantage might be, again, most trials covers all the costs by the manufacturer. It's provided even for the commute of the patients, for the visits and tests and all that. But occasionally there may be studies that not cover all the costs. And not only that, again, some studies, however, again, having said that, some trials offer even compensations for the patient's participation. So just now that we have a good grasp of what is a clinical trial, just want to just list a few medications that are in pipeline. Again, I don't want to focus on a particular trial or a particular medication, but these are some new medications that are in pipeline. For example, again, acetylcholine, this is a medication that works on potassium channels, which is kind of fairly new. None of the current available medications works on potassium channels. So this was in phase 3. The study actually just closed enrollment for focal epilepsy, but it still is enrolling for generalized epilepsies. And our center is one of the centers that is participating in that. So it's still enrolling for generalized epilepsy. Patsivanil is another medication that works, again, another mechanism of action this is still in phase 3. Soticlestat is another medication, again, works with different mechanisms. So there are a bunch of, again, medications in pipeline. Ganaxolone is another medication that is already approved for tuberous sclerosis, a particular type of cause of epilepsies, but other types of epilepsy now still continues to have phase 3. Again, there are some other medications and compounds that is undergoing clinical trials. Okay, so now other than medications, I'm going to wrap up in a few minutes. There are other ways of also treating epilepsy. For example, neuron transplant, GABAergic cell therapy. So basically, these are transplanted interneurons. Basically, they are derivatives of stem cells that transplanted into the brain. They migrate, they mature, and become part of the brain network, and they can help with the seizure control. Basically, they restore the inhibitory circuits of the brain to control the seizures and reduce the excitability of the brain. So one example of that, again, is the clinical trial that is called by implanting these derivatives of stem cells. So these are usually, at this current time, they are used for temporal lobe epilepsies, especially the ones that are involved, the mesial temporal lobe, or what is called MTS. So there are different studies in phase 1 or phase 2, or some of them is going to phase 3 already. So these are important. And there are other types of therapy in pipeline. There are gene therapies. So it aims to fix or replace the faulty genes that is causing the epilepsy. So basically, these healthy genes are provided to the brain cells by different vectors or carriers. So, for example, harmless viruses that can carry this to the brain and replace the non-functioning or ill-functioning genes with healthy genes. So these are usually effective, again, with patients who have epilepsies related to genetic causes, such as Dravet syndrome, for example. So these are very early in this stage of development. They are very, there's a long way to go for the gene therapies. So I just wanted to now mention that. Now, wrap things up, how to get started with clinical trials. If someone is interested, talk to your neurologist, to your community neurologist, whether they are aware of any clinical trial that may be going on and might be right for you. Ask your local hospital, your epilepsy centers that are close to you, if there is any trials that is specifically targets your condition. Search for epilepsy trials. There is a website, clinicaltrials.gov.gov. So it lists all the clinical trials that is going under in this country. So that can be kind of browsed and see if there's anything can be found. Epilepsy Foundation, again, EPI, for example, they might be aware of some clinical trials that they can direct you to. So you may need to meet certain criteria to join any specific clinical trial. Not all patients who are interested meet those criteria. And again, those specifics will be provided to interested participants before, again, enrollments. And again, participation is always voluntary for these clinical trials, can leave the trial at any time if they wish to. So I think that was all I had. So an overview of the clinical trials and how we can basically get involved.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tayer. I apologize. This is wonderful. A lot of great information. I think you generated some interest and excitement around clinical trials. And there are a few questions in the chat. And I suspect that a few more will be coming as we progress. So the first question was, why do you have healthy participants or people who do not have the particular disease or medical condition in phase 1? Why is that?
Good questions. So that is usually for phase 1. So that's the phase that the focus is mostly on the metabolism of the medication, for example, not necessarily the effectiveness of that. But as the trial proceeds with phase 2 and phase 3, those are only mostly those who have the condition will be participating.
Okay, so it's really a focus on the efficacy of the medication and not necessarily, or how it's processed, and not necessarily whether it's going to be effective for someone with a particular medical condition.
Exactly,
In phase
right.
1.
In phase 1, right.
Mhm.
How it's processed in the body or what are the potential side effects. Again, the focus is not mostly on effectiveness of that in phase 1.
Okay. Do participants or patients have to stop their current medication regime in order to participate in clinical trials?
Okay, sorry, there was a
Oh, no, that's okay.
problem with the with the microphone. So
That's okay.
usually the medications remain the same. Most of the trials, the important thing is that these trials is also, again, depending on the condition of every patient, might be a bit of different plan before they can enroll. But the important thing is that most trials require at least 30 days to 90 days of stability in the medication regimen that they're taking before they enter the trial. So whatever their primary neurologists decide to do before they enroll to the study, that changes need to happen at least 1 month to 3 months prior to enrolling in this study. Most of the time, there is a maximum number of seizure medications that is allowed to for the participant to be on. Typically, it's usually 3 medications or maximum 4 medications. So if somebody is on more than that, they have to talk to their neurologist to see if one of them can be taken off, again, like 1 to 3 months prior to the enrollment. Again, most of the time, the seizure medications remain the same unless there is a known or concerned interaction of that particular medication in trial with the medications that are already on board.
Thank you. How does one find out about the requirements necessary to be a candidate?
Right. So again, that's very specific to the trial. So if somebody finds the trial that might be suitable for them with the help of their neurologist or their own search, then that center who is running the trial provides those specifics. So it's every trial has different criteria.
Are there any trials that look to treat epilepsy patients with additional conditions, such as Lyme disease or other degenerative diseases?
Um, I'm sure there are lots of studies that have considered some of these conditions. I mean, if there is anything specifically you're asking now about like degenerative or neurodegenerative disorders. Nothing that I'm aware of right now, but they might be again that requires some search. Um, so there are probably again for neurodegenerative, especially diseases, I think should be some studies with considering specific that population.
Are there any tests that can determine which medication would work best for a patient?
It very much depends on what medication is on research, in what the mechanism of that medication is. There's no one single test, but again, depending on the trial, again, there's a wide variety of trials, what variety of mechanisms of these medications or therapies. So for each one of them, there might be. One of the most common things are, for example, adequate imaging. For example, I mean, the patients had MRI, had adequate EEG, video EEG studies, have their seizures been captured on EEG, for example. Again, it varies a lot between trials. So, but there are lots of times certain tests and that are required to be completed before become eligible.
Great. So we're getting close to time, but I just want, and there are a few more questions. One of them is as far as the age of participants. Do they do trials on children or teens, or is it just adults?
No, absolutely. There are trials also in children, but trials usually have a specific age groups. So some trials might be only for adults, some might be only for children, some may have both. So, but yeah, it's in different ages are different trials are available.
Okay. And then there was a question about how often people can participate in clinical trials. Is it too many?
Well, there's no set number of trials someone can participate in, but there is a kind of a minimum period that is needed between two trials. Lots of trials require, if you have participated in another trial, to be off that trial for a specific amount of time.
And I will take this one last question, and then if I can impose upon you, Doctor, to perhaps look at the chat and respond to the ones that I did not get to.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. So the last one is, does having a genetic mutation that is found, the chat's not cooperating with me.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
To be a
I think
cause to a person's epilepsy preclude them from participating in a trial.
it could be. It could be. I mean, again, every trial has its specifics. I mean, some trials, for example, if a medication that works on a sodium channel in a way that someone, if has a mutation of that particular sodium channel, they may not be able to participate. So these are specifics that comes with every trial, has to be checked.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's a
My
wealth of
pleasure.
information. As you can see, there are still some unanswered questions in the chat. So if you are able to respond, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Dr. Azadir, and also thank you, Irene, for fielding those questions. Moving right along, we're going to go on to our next presenter, and Dr. Simona Pertisa is going to talk about intractable epilepsy. Dr. Pertisa is Associate Director of Epilepsy Monitoring Unit, Northwell Health Comprehensive Epilepsy Center, Assistant Professor Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra, Northwell. Simone is a New York-based Northwell Health physician who specializes in epilepsy neurology. Dr. Pertisa board certifications are American Board of Psychiatric Neurology Epilepsy and American Board of psychiatry and neurology, sorry, with special qualifications in child neurology. So without further ado, we'll have Dr. Patisa's presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Simona Protisa, and I'm going to talk with you today about drug-resistant epilepsy and what can we do to overcome this serious condition. Before we discuss about drug-resistant epilepsy, let's familiarize ourselves with what is epilepsy. Epilepsy, as the majority of us know, is a neurological condition characterized by recurrent seizures. Seizures are due to brief disturbance in the electrical activity of the brain. A person who has more than 2 seizures is diagnosed with epilepsy. Epilepsy can affect people of all ages, and epilepsy can have multiple causes: neurological infection, stroke, head injuries, genetic basis, brain tumor, brain damage from prenatal or perinatal course, and in the vast majority of the cases, we have unknown etiology. In order to treat a condition, we have to establish first what type of epilepsy a patient has and how can we decide what type of epilepsy a patient has. And we know that epilepsy is categorized in basic 2 main types. There are multiple subtypes, but the 2 main types are epilepsy with focal onset, when the seizures start in a specific region of the brain and then it can spread, and epilepsy with generalized onset, when seizures start in both hemispheres and start in both sides of the brain. The treatment and management for these conditions are quite different. Now, how do we know when a patient has a focal type of epilepsy or a generalized type of epilepsy? What tool do we use in order to diagnose this condition? We use a very old but very modern tool in the same time, and we use EEG, which stands for electroencephalogram. And we know that once we apply electroencephalogram, which are stickers applied to a patient head, and we monitor the electrical brain activity, we can define that when a seizure occurs, the electrical activities, meaning the brainwave activity that we record, they change, and the EEG shows exactly where the abnormality is, as depicted here. And the EEG can help identify where and when the seizure starts, if it stopped, when it spread, and what type of seizure is it. And based on this test, very sensitive test, we can discuss with the patient what type of seizure he has and what is the best next step in his seizure management. Now, when we think about how prevalent, how frequent is a seizure and epilepsy, and how frequent patients who suffer from epilepsy, how frequent are their condition, their refractoriness or difficulty to control with medication, we know that out of all patients with epilepsy, 1 in 3, which is a very high number, 1 in 3 people with epilepsy cannot control their seizures with medication alone. And now, when you cannot control your seizures with medication alone, you are diagnosed with drug-resistant epilepsy. Let's review some of the facts related to drug-resistant epilepsy. So we know that in the United States, we have approximately 3 million of people suffering from epilepsy, and 1 million of them, you can see the chart of our country, and we see that how big of this population of patients who experience seizure despite taking anti-seizure medication. Now, we also know that once you fail first medication and you try a second medication, your rate of success in controlling the seizure with the third, fourth, or fifth medication is less than 5%, a very small number. What does it mean? It means that this is a very frequent condition. And even worse, we know that out of every patient with epilepsy, all patients with epilepsy, only 1 in 5 get specialized care, meaning specialized care in an epilepsy center. And I'm going to discuss with you why it's so important once you fail 2 anti-seizure medication to seek care in a comprehensive epilepsy center where you can get more insight in what's the next best step or the best next medication that you might need to control your seizures. So in summary, um, what do what do you have to do? What do we have to do together in a team when the seizures do not stop? We know already that the seizures who do not stop, the refractory seizures, are very common. 56% of adults with epilepsy still experience seizures despite the fact that they are taking medication. We know that only 1 in 3 adults with refractory epilepsy did not see a specialist in the past year, and actually even more, they didn't see a specialist ever. And then why to see a specialist, and why is it so important to see a specialist when you have uncontrolled seizures? Because a specialist will perform additional testing, and I'm going to show you what. A specialist might change the type of medication that you take, might change the dose or the frequency in which you take the medication. And most important, you are going to be able to come in contact with other patients with epilepsy and learn from a team how to manage epilepsy. For this reason, it is very important to see a specialist. So what might be one of the causes or multiple causes for which patients with epilepsy do not respond to 1, 2, or 3 anti-seizure medication? Let's analyze what happened with the anti-seizure medication once it is ingested by mouth, once it is swallowed, and it reached the stomach. We know that from the stomach, drug is absorbed into the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, both liver and kidney are removing a portion of the drug as the time from the ingestion passes. So in this way, only a specific percentage is reaching the brain via the bloodstream. And this percentage becomes lower and lower depending on the type of medication that you take. That's why, in order to maintain a stable concentration of the medication in the brain, in order to have the highest chance to control your seizure, you have to take the medication as prescribed twice a day, 3 times per day, or once a day, depending on the type of medication that you are taking. So we discuss about drug-resistant epilepsy, and usually once we identify a disease, we think that it is very easy to treat. It's not the case for drug-resistant epilepsy. As you see here, what are the potential mechanisms by which a type of epilepsy becomes drug-resistant? You do see that it ranges. There are various causes for which a type of epilepsy becomes refractory, depending on the etiology, severity, worsening epilepsy pattern, drug target alteration. There are multiple reasons for which a type of epilepsy can become refractory, not to forget about genetic factors, patient predisposition, other drug-related factors. Maybe a patient developed tolerance or intolerance to medication, then the medication has to be changed. There are different inflammatory processes, there are different comorbidities, and their roles, all of these factors are something that comes into evaluation when you see an epilepsy specialist in a comprehensive epilepsy center. You see and you know that there are multiple anti-seizure medications which have been developed exactly in response to this continuous need to control better the seizure, the epilepsy. And you see at how many targets this anti-seizure medication have, just because, as we saw, the etiology of drug-resistant epilepsy is very diverse, and these medications are trying to cover all the possibility that by which a synapse in the brain depicted here can become refractory to medication. The largest group of medication that we use are the medication called sodium channel medication that are here in this blue square, and they do target the voltage gated sodium channel. And usually when we pick the second, third, or fourth medication, we pick medication that do belong to different groups. We avoid using medication from the same group. And you can appreciate here where is the synapse. The synapse is the neuronal connection in the brain. And you appreciate here that we try to control the changes that happen prior to the synaptic membrane and then the inhibitory synapse and the excitatory synapse, which is where we try to stop the electrical dysfunction that it is recorded by EEG. We try to stop the electrical dysfunction using different type of medication and different targets. Now, it has been a high interest in this highly refractory condition. And we see that from 1850, when we had only maybe one medication, the first generation of medication starting 1930 and then 1980, the science advanced a lot. And recently we have more than 22 or 23 medications, and the list is keep expanding. And maybe this time the question is, why is science, why us as specialists and patients are needing such a diverse type of medication? The answer is simple. The etiology of drug-resistant epilepsy is very diverse, and we have to anticipate which medication might control them better. Unfortunately, we don't have yet a perfect medication. That's why we have to use combination of medication, and that's why we keep looking for different targets that might control the seizure better. If we look at this chart from a different perspective, starting with 1994, when one of the medication, lamotrigine, was invented, we see that in the beginning were like every 4 or 5 years, and then every year or every 6 to 7 years, we have medications that are FDA approved on the market, with ending in 2022 when ganaxolone was approved for different type of conditions. These different colors and different type of medication also document the interest that we have for precision medicine. And some of the medication, like ganaxolone, was approved for a specific genetic condition, which means that the way we evaluate the epilepsy evolve, and the need for new medication is even higher. So how does refractory epilepsy affect a patient's life? What kind of problems do they have? They can have multiple, and I'm depicting here only some of them, but these problems are usually interrelated. We know that anti-seizure medications have a lot of adverse side effects. Even so, if you use more than 1, 2, 3, or 4, we know that refractory epilepsy by itself can cause cognitive problems. Side effects from the medication can accentuate and aggravate these problems. We know that refractory epilepsy is a barrier for a patient to complete their educational, vocational, or social desire, and it has severe consequences. Isolation is very common in patients with refractory epilepsy. We know that epilepsy itself and medication sometimes can affect mood and personality, increases increases risk of comorbidities, mortality, SUDEP, which stands for sudden unexpected death in epilepsy. Those are all very common in refractory epilepsy. So due to persistent seizure, due to neurochemical changes, the quality of life of patients with epilepsy and their family is very restricted. A patient who failed two anti-seizure medications should be referred to a level 4 epilepsy center, which where we do have a lot of modalities in which we can investigate the type of epilepsy and what's the best treatment. And we do use the scalp EEG monitoring that I show you already, and a very, very specialized type of brain MRI, usually 3 Tesla or 7 Tesla for more for research, with a specific epilepsy protocol in which we try to identify if there are any changes in the brain that might explain where the seizure starts from. In left, in blue, is depicted here the most ideal scenario in which the seizure focus is identified. It is easily accessible by surgery, either laser or resection, and then the patient is, counseled as such. Sometimes, in order to identify this focus, you need also an intracranial video EEG monitoring, where the small electrodes are inserted in the brain and try to localize at very small regions of the brain that trigger seizures. In the majority of the cases, actually, we have scenario 2 and 3 in which we do see that seizures based on the EEG recording and also on the semiology, on the presentation, what a patient does during a seizure, a patient can have more than one seizure type, and more than one seizure type raises the possibility that a patient can have more than one focus. And then the question is, which one can you resect? Usually, if there is more than one focus and in regions of the brain that are carry high functional risk, then we don't think about resection. We think about further investigation like PET-CT, PET-MRI, and we think about discussing cases with additional testing like MEG in epilepsy conference to decide where and how to implant video EEG in order to gather additional information to clarify further where the seizure starts from. And if an epilepsy focus is identifying more than 2 or 3 areas, especially in regions of the brain that are very important for functionality, we do consider neuromodulation instead of resection. We do consider additional medication, dietary therapy. We do have other ways in which we can offer a better seizure control. So to summarize what type of epilepsy surgery we can offer, and then this is not all the surgeries that we can offer, but we do have resective surgery, as I told you, when there is only one seizure focus and it is close to the surface and it can be removed by surgery. That's the resective surgery. We can use laser interstitial thermal therapy, which is the same type as a resective surgery, only that it is minimally invasive and the patient doesn't even have to spend the night in the hospital. When we want to use this minimally invasive therapy, we have to make sure that we have an intracranial monitoring which documents exactly where the seizure starts from. We do have a procedure called corpus callosotomy, which is widely used in pediatric, but recently also in adults, in which the two hemispheres are disconnected via laser. And this procedure is used to control a type of seizure called drop attacks, which are highly refractory to medication. Now, we do have hemispherectomy and functional hemispherectomy depending of the type of disease that one hemisphere of the brain has. And if the hemisphere can be safely removed, then it is removed. If not, it's only disconnected from the other healthier hemisphere to try to avoid the disease hemisphere to affect the properly function hemisphere. We also have, in terms of neuromodulation, I told you if you have more than 2 or 3 foci or places in the brain where the seizures start from, you are not a resective candidate, you are not a surgery candidate in the terms of laser or resection, but you can be a candidate for deep brain stimulation, you can be a candidate for neuromodulation in general. So when I said about the fact that we are looking where the seizures start from, and which is depicted here as called as a seizure hotspot. You see here in the left on the MRI where the seizures start from. You also see that the brain has very important regions that are functionally important. You cannot resect them without a patient having serious consequences. So you have the motor area in red, you have the language area, and you have the visual area in green. So assuming that here in an ideal situation, the seizure hotspot doesn't involve any of this very important region, you can resect this region. But if let's assume that this hotspot is exactly in the motor area or in the visual area, resecting those spots will result in patient being hemiplegic or being unable to see. So that's the moment when, if the seizures start in a region that's very functionally important for a patient, usually we offer type of neuromodulation in which you don't lose function, but you still can have your seizure better controlled. Now, what are the devices that we have for neuromodulation in order to treat epilepsy? We have basically 2 big groups of devices. One is the vagal nerve stimulator, which is a smaller device that it is implanted in the chest, in the left side of the chest, doesn't involve epilepsy, doesn't involve brain surgery. It is that neurostimulation is applied via the vagus nerve, which is in the neck, and the vagus nerve is going to stimulate the brain. And then we have the brain responsive neurostimulation. There are 2 types. One is RNS, responsive neurostimulator, or DBS, which stands for deep brain stimulator. And I'm going to show you the size and the way these devices can help controlling the epilepsy. Here in this picture is depicted a vagal nerve stimulator in which you see here a very small battery. The battery life is usually 10 years. And via some wires, they are applied, the neurosurgeon applied them around the left vagal nerve, and then the nerve has termination in the brain, and from this generator, the electrical impulse is going to stimulate the vagal nerve, and vagal nerve is going to stimulate the brain, trying to decrease the hyperexcitability and providing a way of controlling the seizures without interacting with the other anti-seizure medication. It was recently approved also for treatment of depression. Now, this is the tablet and this is the wand that we use to increase or decrease the setting. And this is the battery that it is implanted via a small incision in the left side of the chest. Going further in considering the more invasive type of procedure for more severe types of epilepsy, we are looking at a deep brain stimulator. And you see here the same stimulator like the VNS patients, but they have wires that are implanted that are stimulated according to the stimulation schedule in order to stimulate an epileptic network and to try to decrease the hyperexcitability and to control seizure better. This is a more invasive type of surgery, and very important, it can be applied for patients who have more than 2 or 3 epileptic foci, because it doesn't involve any type of resection. Now, the most advanced type of responsive neurostimulator, another part of brain stimulator, is the RNS responsive neurostimulator, which is depicted here, where the battery is not implanted in the chest, it is implanted under the skull. And the leads of this device are implanted exactly where the seizure starts from. This is, as the name implies, it is responsive. It doesn't stimulate all the time. It is implanted as like a micro EEG, which is implanted in the brain. And when these leads depicted here are detecting an abnormal electrical activity, like a build-up that will lead to a seizure, that this device deliver an electric shock to stop the seizure before it spread. And it was shown that the effect of the RNS improve over time, and the seizures start decreasing in frequency. The type of this device has a wand in which a patient can download the data by applying this wand on their head, can download the data every day, and we have a group of technicians who are monitoring the type and response of seizure frequency to different neuromodulation. This is very sensitive and requires a patient to have the ability to manipulate the electronic devices. And this is the size of the neuromodulator, the NeuroPace modulator. You have to see how it's a small size compared with a coin or with a pen, and it is implanted under the skull, and the leads are going into the brain. This requires a prior video EEG monitoring, intracranial video EEG monitoring, or stereo video EEG, in which you have to know exactly where the seizure starts from in order to apply the neuromodulation exactly in that spot. And here you are going to see a patient downloading the data from her RNS to the computer, and you can notice that nothing is visible on the outside. Now, as a conclusion, for the treatment of epilepsy and treatment for refractory epilepsy, or to try to prevent transition from an epilepsy responsive type to an epilepsy to a medication refractory type, we have a group of therapeutic approaches: pharmacological, anti-seizure, anti-epileptic medication. We have surgery, resective or laser ablation. We have neurostimulation. We have brain stimulation. We do have recently nanomedicine with nanotechnology, and less developed as of yet. You see in smaller shapes, we have precision medicine, in which you try to shape the treatment based on a comprehensive genetic approach and multidisciplinary approach. We have gene therapy. We have some limited natural products, and we have the ketogenic diet that again has a lot of interest, but keeping a ketogenic diet is not as easy as somebody might think. And with this, I want to thank everyone, and looking forward for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Protisa. You're getting a lot of love and applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward for the questions.
Yeah. So we have several questions in the chat and coming from the watch party as well. Oh boy, we have a lot. Okay. So the first question, and I'll ask them in the order that they came through in the chat. What can be done for epilepsy that it also is occurring because of Dandy Walker and depression?
That's a very good question. Epilepsy never comes alone, even the one that's responsive to medication. We try to control seizures when they occur when we have a structural defect, like in Dandy Walker or any other type of structural defect. We try to use medication with a good side effect profile. We know already that Keppra or levetiracetam, widely used, has a side effect of causing or worsening depression, so we try to avoid that medication. We try to use medication with a better side effect profile, like Depakote is widely used, which is more for a generalized type of epilepsy. We can use lamotrigine, so we have to carefully choose medication, and we have to control seizure. Repetitive seizure is associated with increased depression and increased mood disturbance. Now, if this doesn't work, like only using anti-seizure medication to rely on the medication side effect profile, we use medication for mood stabilizer, and we highly recommend collaboration with a psychiatrist and with a therapist to address the question.
Thank you. Is meningioma associated with epilepsy?
Yes, it is associated in, I'm an adult epileptologist and with prior training in pediatrics. So a lot of cases of meningioma are discovered because of first-time seizure, and then the meningioma is discovered. Unfortunately, not all the cases are responsive. So if meningioma is resected, not all the cases are going to be also seizure-free, because the epileptogenicity, sometimes it is a bit outside of the meningioma itself. So it is not uncommon for patients to still experience seizures, usually less frequent after the meningioma resection, but yes, meningioma is associated with seizures.
When is it safe to assume that a patient has responded to a medication? Is it a month, 6 months, a year? Is there a rule?
That's a great question, and this is where team approach comes, and I highly recommend everyone to discuss with their epileptologist before and during the medication initiation. Usually the way you assess if a seizure is responsive to medication, first is you hope that not to have a seizure ever in your life, which is ideal, doesn't happen so often. Second is, if you have a seizure with an epilepsy condition with high frequency of seizures, after starting a medication, 2 or 3 weeks after starting medication, you have to decrease in seizure frequency. So let's say you have a seizure once every 3 days. With medication, you have to start having a seizure once every 4 or 5 days. And if you still have them that frequent, the duration should be shorter. You have seizures for 5 minutes, let's say. You initiate the medication, then the duration is maybe every 3 minutes. This tells us that the dose of medication has to be increased. We always start with a low dose or with a medium dose, just to document tolerance. And after that, we increase the medication appropriately. If there is no change in medication after 6 or 8 weeks, if there is no change in seizure frequency or duration after 6 or 8 weeks, the medication has to be adjusted or changed to something else.
Thank you. There's several more questions, and I will enter the ones that came from our watch party into the chat so that you can respond to those if you are, if we can indulge upon you after your presentation to respond to the questions in the chat. But I did want to note something. In your presentation, you had talked about 1/3 of adults have not been seen by a specialist in a year.
Yeah.
You know, of course, on Long Island, in the metro New York area, and urban areas of, you know, the capital region, out in Rochester, Buffalo, we're lucky enough to have comprehensive epilepsy centers. We're lucky enough to have specialists, epileptologists. What do you recommend for people who live perhaps in rural areas, or it takes a lot of time for them to be able to travel to see a specialist. Do you have any recommendations? And can they work with their general neurologist in conjunction with a specialist? Is there somehow a way to do that?
I think that's a great question. Just because you are seen in an emergency room and you are starting on some medication or like that, doesn't mean that your epilepsy was clearly evaluated, type, chances of resistance. So rural areas I'm very interested in the way patients should be treated for. I always thought that zip code should not impact your approach to and being seen by specialists. COVID, I think that taught us only one good thing, that we can use technology to shorten the distance. So I would say that everyone should be seen by a specialist at least one time in their life, at least to have a clear diagnosis of epilepsy. Sometimes we don't know who is going to be responsive, who's going to be not responsive to medication. There are other comorbidities. And I think that all the epilepsy centers, myself included, are very open to have a patient being seen once, understand the distance, and then to continue to work with a general neurologist or with patient himself or herself via televisit, so this is something that we should consider, and then to come and visit us if we consider surgery or neuromodulation or other types of, if the seizures are not well controlled. We are better equipped to discuss the possibilities. What are the possibilities at the first visit? What can we do if first medication doesn't work, if second doesn't work? Because there is a way in which you don't just pile up all the medication that I show you in the graph. You really remove one, you adjust the other. So there are a lot of ways in which we can treat epilepsy. The fact that we have less than 5% chances to control the seizure doesn't mean that we don't try different ways of controlling seizure. So I highly recommend discussing about using technology for televisit.
Thank you so much. We are at time, and I know there are many questions. I'm going to, as I said, I will add questions from the watch party, our watch party, into the chat. This is being recorded, so everyone will be able to refer back to this wonderful presentation. And again, if we can indulge upon you to respond to the many questions in the chat.
Thank you. I'll be more than happy. And don't forget, you have my email address if you want to contact me or anything. More than happy to help you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Partisa.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Partisa. And again, Irene, thank you for fielding those questions. And like she said, Dr. Partisa will answer as many questions as possible out of the chat as possible. And we're moving right along. We have a jam-packed agenda, and now we have a panel, a self-management panel, and it consists of 4 individuals, one of which works for EPI, Denise Eschenauer. She's our clinical social worker, and she facilitates several of those several of those groups. We have Virginia Heckman, or Ginny Heckman, who is a Hopscotch and PACES graduate. We have Corey Shays, who is also a PACES graduate, and Dina Van Kuren, who is, again, a PACES graduate. And we're just going to spend some time listening to the 4 of them talk about their experiences with these self-management programs. And again, a wealth of knowledge here for all the attendees to listen up. And if you have questions for each of the for each of the panelists, you can put them in the chat, and they can address them after each one of them goes and talks about their experiences. So Denise, welcome, and take it away.
Great, thanks, Mike. I am so happy to be here today to talk about these. Dr. Partisa mentioned things like mood and cognitive changes and some of the challenges associated with community living and maybe vocational stuff. That's what we get to talk about today. So these are self-management programs that are part of the Managing Epilepsy Well Network. We love our acronyms here. So the MEW network. New programs are developed in partnership with the CDC, research institutions, and epilepsy service organizations like those represented in the coalition. So 12 years ago, approximately, EPI started our journey with new programs with Uplift. And that, again, our acronyms, that stands for using practice and learning to increase favorable thoughts. So the goal of Uplift is to empower people with epilepsy to improve their mental health through mindfulness and cognitive behavioral skills. It is increasing our knowledge and skills that will help to improve quality of life. It helps us to challenge some of the negative thoughts. It helps with behavioral activation to plan for doing things differently. We learn to cope. We learn some problem solving, and we learn a lot about mindfulness. It uses validated mental health measures to measure any changes in mental health. And that's one of the really cool things about all of these programs is they're research-based, and they've been demonstrated to really help people make a difference in how they feel, what their experience is. So Uplift is the research partner with that is Emory University, and it's an 8-week group. And when we started doing this, it was all on the phone, and since then we've all learned how to Zoom. So we now do an audiovisual format like Zoom, which really helps because in addition to having all of these things that we're working on, the support that people get to give each other is huge. Being able to see and really relate to one another makes a big difference. Another one of the programs that we offer that is a part of the MU network is PACES, and that is a program of active consumer engagement in self-management in epilepsy. And the goal for that is to improve medical, psychosocial, and community adjustment for people with epilepsy. So that helps adults manage epilepsy and learn some of the strategies to adjust in the community, because there are a lot of things that you have to be thinking about. How do you talk to your doctor? How do you talk to your employer? Which things do you choose to self-disclose, and how does all of that work? So having a format where we get to talk about these things and the opportunity for people to share what has worked for them and their experiences, it's golden. Our partner for this in terms of developing it is the University of Washington. PACES is also an 8-week group. So it's a group format where everybody gets to kind of share. And again, that is a huge part of why it is perceived to be a helpful thing, because it's not just reading a book. It's not just having a one-on-one conversation. It's people supporting each other, and that is huge. The last of the programs that we will talk about today is Hopscotch. Again, we love our acronyms. Home-based self-management and cognitive training changes lives. So the goal of this is to improve quality of life for adults with epilepsy who experience memory and attention problems. And that's just self-identified. You get to choose if you feel like you're having some cognitive problems. It's a great thing. There are so many strategies. Wow. This one is developed in conjunction with Dartmouth Hitchcock, and it's a pretty cool thing. It's not rocket science, and it's not going to change your memory, but it changes the skills that you have to deal with memory problems. More than half of people with epilepsy report having some problems with their memory. So it's a neat way to just have a chance to think some of those through and decide what can you do something about? What are you going to do to improve your experience? Because that's the thing. All of these things all of these programs are focused on quality of life. We want to make sure that everybody has the chance for the very best quality of life. So Hopscotch is that it teaches strategies for managing and coping with memory challenges. and to just lead happier, more productive lives. Hopscotch is delivered in a one-on-one program. That way you can identify some of the specific things that are happening in your life, and we can look to find some good ways to kind of manage some of those things. So that's kind of a general overview. And I would like to invite Ginny to talk a little bit about her experiences.
All right. Hi, I'm Jenny Heckman, and a little background for my epilepsy. I began to have severe, I called them tonic-clonic at the time, seizures in a cluster. I had, man, it was crazy. And in time, I learned that I had mesial right frontotemporal epilepsy. And it was devastating because when I started having these seizures, I lost large packets of my memory. I lost the past. I lost being able to learn, and I thought I had Alzheimer's. So fast forward, I began to search for some sort of help because my life was overwhelmed. I didn't remember how to turn on a stove and, not burn the house down. So I reached out and found online Hopscotch, and I reached out and asked for help. Denise was incredibly helpful and very, very she was very sympathetic, empathetic to what I was going through. So we began the program. And so we went over a bunch of tools. I had the memory toolbox where we would talk about, clarifying questions and, I don't know, all of them, using an assistive technology such as Alexa or inputting things into a calendar. I lost a lot of my life. I lost my profession, and that I'm 50 years old. So, I'm 53. So I started and had these seizures when I was 50. And so I was in a professional role, and I found that I was unable to do what I had done previously. And so she helped me also with, you know, acceptance there, having, understanding what my feelings were and being honest about my feelings, and some management tools to get over, my anxiety and that for any kind of social interaction. So, I did, prayer or meditation. I did box breathing, and that was very, very helpful. All right, I just lost it, but what I intended to say. But, there were some adaptive strategies that were used for trying to know the people that I was talking to and paying attention to what they were saying, because I could not follow a conversation at all. I would lose it. I still have a problem with that, frankly, but it has been greatly helped because of, the whole mirroring, clarifying questions and that, and my social skills, working on that because of not being able to understand conversations if there was any sort of noise or disruptions around me. So like in a lot of cases, I would have to be very open with the people that I would never remember. Well, maybe not never, but I would not know their name the next time I'd see them. And that's still the case. I haven't gotten out of a lot of those things, but my life is so much better. I'm unable to go back to my functional role. However, I can live a life. I use Alexa regularly for lighting a candle, to turn it off, to remember to take my medications, and I use a Google Calendar that I share with my family. So like my husband is part of my shared calendar, so I don't miss doctor's appointments or just the basics of family function, being able to go to a Christmas event and not realize, and not miss it like I had many, many times before. And I really am appreciative because I really think that hopscotch was triage for me. Even now, obviously I have issues. I went to PACES also, and all of those self-management items have helped. Denise also told me that I would have to accept if I never got my epilepsy under control. And I don't have it under control, but life is a lot better. And I thank you all for giving me hopscotch. It has really improved the quality of my life. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Now we can move on. And Corey, if you want to give your story.
Yes, first I want to say I'm like very emotional and sympathetic. I think that everybody that's going through this can understand it. And I think that people that aren't don't understand it. And I think that is the biggest thing that I got out of PACES is I was diagnosed at 5 years old with epilepsy. Nobody really knew anything about epilepsy at that time. So it was like this deep, dark secret that I kept from everyone because I didn't want anyone to know what was wrong with me, even when I didn't know. And the older I got, the more intense my epilepsy has gotten. Sorry. I'm now at the place where I'm getting ready for brain surgery. And I think without PACES, I don't know where I would have been. It let me know that I can live somewhat of a normal life. But the biggest thing for me was that there were other people out there that understood what I was going through, how I felt, and just learning like day-to-day things, things that like I had already been doing and we would talk about that week made me feel a sense of like community, but also proud of myself that I was doing these things. And I can't speak more about it, that it like completely changed the kind of trajectory of my thoughts. Obviously, all of this stuff I have coming up is very scary, but to know that there is a large group of people, whether I know them or not, that understand it, it's something that is, again, it's feeling part of something when you've felt very, very, sorry, very alone. And I think it's something that I want to do it again. I've asked to do it again this next time, but I think it's different in each time because you meet different people, you hear different stories, and you see, you know, I'm not allowed, or I'm not able to work right now. My profession, I'm an actor, and I'm just not at the point where my brain can handle that. So I have had a very difficult time leaving my apartment or having a sense of life. And I think that PACES helped me with that, knowing that, again, there's other ways that other people handle things. There are, you know, things that I wouldn't have even thought about. There are things that I spoke to another doctor about, knowing that those things were implemented. Even just saying the things that I did were so helpful to other people. You know, and vice versa. It was a community that, even though I haven't seen those members since then, I'll never forget them. I'll never forget like their journey. And I know that like we're all in the same ship. Sorry to be emotional.
Corey, thank you so much for your courage and sharing. And now we're going to round out the panel with Dina Van Kuren, if you want to share your story as well.
Hi, guys. Yeah, you two are nailing it pretty much. Thanks for, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be a part of the talk today. And and my cat also wants to join, apparently. Um, sorry. I feel like, Corey, you hit a lot of the same points, and about paces. And in Virginia, I haven't done hopscotch yet, but it's on my, like, I definitely want to do it because I am looking forward to increasing my memory and um, just general things. And just kind of, I feel like the more parts you do, it's kind of like you have more puzzle pieces and can put it together and feel like you have more control over yourself as a person with epilepsy. Um, I jotted some notes down because my thoughts kind of scatter with my ADHD. So I was like, hopefully it'll be smooth. Um, I was going through like what parts of paces I liked, and I looked forward to it every single week. It was something to look forward to because on top of dealing with epilepsy and the uncertainties of that and what's today going to bring, I knew I had something to look forward to every week, that no matter who was in that group, I knew that at least one person understood where I was coming from, and zero judgment. It was always left at the door. And I knew that I was in a safe place with people that actually care, with open hearts, open minds, open ears, that everybody was really welcomed. Um, so I liked having like, Denise, I remember doing like the reflection points, and I would go back and, I was like, do I really take a moment out of my day to stop and write my thoughts down? And some of them were interesting thoughts, some of them probably not the most positive at the time. Yay, depression. But it allowed me a place to just put them there. Um, so I felt like I was hearing myself, because sometimes I'm like, am I listening to myself? It was giving me a little tiny stage for my thoughts in that sense, felt like I was trying to get more grounded. And like what was it? The homework that I would give, like that Paces was like, hey, try this for the week, and like the stress management exercises, like the breathing, and things like little reminders. I'm like, oh yeah, why don't I do that? You know what I mean? And then some other ones that I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Um, you know, it was just a nice list of. It was kind of like the homework that when you were younger in school, that you're like, oh, I want to do this homework. This sounds like fun. So it was like I found it very beneficial, um, and just tips and tricks and how to just like feel again like you're in control of yourself. Like, the word self-management, it's like it can't get any more defined than that. Like, how can I get more in control of myself, my emotions, my stress, um, while dealing with the unanswered questions I have about my epilepsy. Um, and I know that it was always like well planned. Like the notes, I liked it. There was always like so much room to take notes, in the program. Um, it everything was broken down nicely, so I could look ahead for the week, but then know like, okay, what are we going to be studying this week? And then everybody would have their food for thought, and we would all add it kind of together, which was nice. And I remember writing down people's advice and like people's thoughts, and like making just notes to myself, like, oh yeah, okay, so I do that too, or okay, sweet, so that's normal. Okay, cool, and like just kind of feeling like again, like I wasn't alone. Um, and then I still look at the pleasant events part where you circle the things that bring you joy, because I was just like, sometimes I just need a reminder as well, like, oh yeah, I forgot I really like to do that. Why don't I try that again? Even if it's, if there's 50 things circled and I did one thing that week, even now where I'm like, okay, that still brings me joy. All right, cool. Um, it felt very communal. Uh, and it was for, not being able to drive for a while, as we all know, sucks, to put it bluntly. And socially, that really takes a hit, financially takes a hit, unemployment, it's just everything. You just feel like you're like this rubble is just falling upon you. Um, and so getting together every week, was like a little bit of light. And I felt like I had a social life. Like I was like, oh, I'm I get to meet with my friends this week, and very much like a community feeling to it. And also, I feel like it was one of those things where I would tell people about it outside of people with epilepsy. Like I was like, oh hey, like people like, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm doing, I'm on the right side of the grass. I'm trying to, I'm taking these programs or I'm doing some support groups. So I'd always tell people about them, be like, advocate, advocate, advocate. And I was like, hey, if you could spread the word and just remind the world that we exist. And I feel like I'm becoming more and more unapologetically assertive with that. Like I was like, hi, I know we look normal, whatever that means, but every day is a struggle, you know. Um, so I think that it brought out confidence in me as well with paces that it was like, okay, if you get a hold of yourself, you're behind the driver's seat, you know, even though I'm still trying to control epilepsy itself, but I can still control myself as much as I can, because emotions are hard, man. Like they're always, between medications, between the parts of your brain that are damaged. It's just like, you know, you know, sometimes I'll turn a cry into a laugh and I'm like, sweet, that's a win, but so it's like, um, but yeah, it's yeah, see, I get emotional too when I talk about it. Gets like one of those things where it's just at the end of the day, it's nice to know um that you're not alone. There's people that care, there's people that give a damn. Um, and that, you know, Denise, you're awesome. You brought such grace to the program, and even talking, you were so calming. So um I look forward to doing Uplift. I look forward to doing hopscotch or hopscotch, and if anybody hasn't taken any of these and they can, I highly recommend. I know most of you don't know me, but it really is great. It just gives you, it's like some positivity, and you can do with that what you will, but I think there's a lot of great tools in there. And I appreciate the research that was done behind it. And I know there's probably more to come, more programs to come and whatnot, but I feel like it's definitely something I looked forward to. And I'm looking forward to new ones as well that I haven't done yet. So thank you.
Thank you so much. My goodness, there are a number of comments and questions in the chat, but I just want to start with a heartfelt thank you. And, they've been coming across on the reactions as well. But for all of you to share of your own selves, to have the courage to be vulnerable, to show how epilepsy affects you, the impact on your day-to-day life, and how these programs have helped you. And so much so, Corey, you said you're going back for more.
Yes, I would love to. When I got a call from Dr. Meltzer, just sort of talking about it and asking, I was like, yes, sign me up. I'll be first in line. Because again, I think it's different each time you take it, depending on who's in there. And again, something that like I didn't even touch on is the weekly things that they do help you like remember how to take your pills, and everybody will say kind of what they do, and I think those kind of things, figure out how other people handle their stress and their sleep patterns, and all of that, I think is another aspect besides what us ladies talked about that is very, very helpful. I would take it 10 times if I could.
Thank you. Okay, so are you up for fielding some questions from the chat? Okay, wonderful. So one of the questions is, how do these programs address concrete thinking? Denise, maybe you want to field that?
Sure. So it's hard to address. I'm guessing that this is meaning, how do you expand to not limit yourself to concrete thinking? Is that kind of what we're looking at? So concrete thinking is just focusing a lot on the here and now and what you can see. And it is not things like the metaphors and inferences and abstract stuff. So some people have a really hard time with understanding the metaphors and things like that. So something like hopscotch isn't necessarily going to address that specifically. There are things that are related that you absolutely can do, but a lot of it involves rehearsal. Having somebody explain exactly what this one particular metaphor might mean, and then rehearsing it enough to feel like you can understand it. It's not going to be something that's going to be generalized to all kinds of different situations. Maybe times that is brought up, but it really isn't something that is intended to expand a lot of the more abstract stuff. It is going to focus on a lot of the literal stuff and things that you can observe. And so maybe you'd be able to observe somebody's facial expressions, and you can do some learning with a facial expression kind of thing. And what does that mean? So the what does it mean part is the abstract part. The noticing somebody's, their what does that mean? Well, maybe it would be that you are recognizing those specific things that would help you in a person's body language or facial expression that might help you to know what anger is. But that's not necessarily what hopscotch focuses on. It absolutely can, but it's not necessarily part of the curriculum. I don't know if that was in any way helpful, but.
Thank you. Okay. So we did put in the chat links to PACES, Hopscotch, and also Uplift. And, but of course, please, if there are any questions or, for some reason you're not able to make the connection that way, any one of the agencies of the Epilepsy Coalition can serve as a resource. And we have put that information in the chat as well. But some other questions are, what other smart assistive technology options can you recommend to help with memory, reminders, etc.?
I actually have a couple. One of them is that I
Great.
use apps all the time. So when you talk about that, I have a seizure tracker. So when I have a seizure, it will, I don't have to worry about trying to remember what seizures I've had. So that's incredibly helpful. And I also have an app that is for developing questions and comments, and that to prepare for my doctor's appointments beforehand. So by doing those things, it kind of helps me communicate better with the doctor, and it will, it just helps so much in communication. And it really has been beneficial. We're changing medications and, working on some of the emotional things that are involved with it. And I love technology. I loved it before I started having seizures, but now I can see how helpful they are.
And I as well, I have an epilepsy journal and I track everything that happens. I'm also very fortunate enough to have a wife so that if I'm in a situation where I can't remember it or don't remember it, she does. I use a lot of alarms on my phone to take medication. I set 2 alarms, one, take it, and a second one, did you take it? I've used smart pill boxes before. Definitely family calendars. I record all of my doctor's appointments because I tend to get very overwhelmed. And when I leave, my mom, my wife will say, "What did they say?" And I said, I can't remember, or I'll remember like little tidbits. That's been super helpful. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I just can't think of right now, but those kind of things are shared throughout PACES. And I've taken a lot of things, what other people have done, not even necessarily what was suggested, but tried those and it's been helpful.
I do a lot with calendars. I'm a huge calendar person, paper calendar, phone calendar, everything that the more I can write things down. I record a lot of stuff similar, Corey, like just so I can have it there. So if I need to go back or I'm like, okay, oh, I said that. Oh, cool. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, okay. And then I'm like, that happened. Sometimes it's like, oh, new information. And then, but I'm very old school where I like to write things down because I feel like the writing of it down helps me remember it. Um, and then the problem is I have like 87 notebooks that are all different now. So if I could figure out how to connect the dots with all that, put that all into one thing. I'm not super tech savvy, so I'm trying to be a little bit more open to it. I would like to get some help with like exercise and heart rate stuff, and if that's um I think could be a trigger in my life with epilepsy. So I'm trying to figure out what to, I'm trying to figure out what app is out there that I can use to be like, all right, what is this telling me? Like, am I too much? Is it not enough? Like, I'm not even sure it's out there, but I've been trying to figure out how to if there's something like that that exists, that would be helpful. But yeah,
There's
I feel like, oh, good.
there's something called an aura ring, and it's just something
Oh yeah,
that you wear and it tracks. I've heard about that in Paces.
yeah. I would say that's probably where I heard about it too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write it down because I keep forgetting that it is there. Um, yeah, but there's definitely, I mean, even like I said earlier, I still go back to my paces and I have it right here with my, all my tabs and notes and so it's like I still go through it. Yeah. And just so I know, like, just a reminder, like, you know, hey, I haven't looked at this in a while. And it gives you like a bit of a boost into remembering how far you have come as a person with epilepsy.
Thank you so much. You are all getting a lot of thank yous, and people are so grateful for you sharing again such personal, emotional stories. And there is a whole community out there that is benefiting from what you are sharing today. So I hope you know that. I hope you know what an impact you are having. And there are a few more questions. As far as these programs, are they available for children and or families, or is it only for adults?
Right now, it's only for adults, but I know that they're working on a teen version of Paces. It's not ready to be fully distributed yet. And families, not necessarily families, but I think if there is a person who would like to be the self-identified person who is going to be the primary participant, you could probably have a support person or two also learning alongside.
Thank you. So this was asked about, and I think it might have been covered, but it can't hurt to mention it again. Does anyone use online journaling to help remember things? And if so, which ones do you use?
Oh,
Take it
I'll
away,
have to look.
Jenny.
Well, let's see what the name of it is. All right. I have one that's the Epsy. It's something for Epsy that I use. And oh man. And I also use it's AHRQ question builder, which is, one that I use in part to work on what I communicate to the doctors with. It just gives me a specific way to, write, symptoms and that. So there are two that I use. I actually have more. My husband is a tech person too, so we live it. And that's what I did as a and I actually use Fitbit. When I first started having having my seizures and that, I found that my heart rate went up considerably in the evenings because I have nocturnal seizures. So my heart rate was considerably higher, and rather than at my rest, through the day. And that is totally not what it's supposed to do. It's actually supposed to go down in sleep. But mine would go up 20, 20, whatever it is, 20, from my heart rate, 20 up. And so um, it was an interesting thing. And it was one of those things that I brought to the doctor and I said, what is going on here? And since I have nocturnal epilepsy, it also probably there are obviously better things, but it also will show me, when I'm waking up because, my seizures are in the N2 stage of sleep. So that impacts REM, which impacts my memory. So I find that the more I see those sleep disruptions and that, as I'm trying to go into my body's going into REM, that will indicate to me, that I could be having, I could have had a seizure that I was unaware of because I have seizures pretty much every night. I have 3 seizures a night that I know of. And they're very consistent with the times that they are. And, the Fitbit with that type of tracking, is very helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Ginny. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, but if people want to look in the chat, there's also some other recommendations. Some people use Notes, others use Rocketbook. And again, you can see that in the chat, but thank you all for participating today, sharing of yourselves, providing some wonderful resources that all of us in the community can use. Thank you.
So that was an amazing panel. Thank you so much for sharing everything. You guys are, along with the other people on this call, you guys are my epilepsy heroes. So thank you so much for your sharing. And we really, really appreciate you being here and talking about the self-management tools that are available to not only the people that are on this call, but people in general who have had some difficult times dealing with the diagnosis of epilepsy. So thank you. We're going to move on to a little break now. We're going to take a deep breath. And then when we return from break, we're going to have our keynote speaker, Miles Levine, and we're going to hear from him. And then we're going to watch the short film. It is now in full-length production, but we're going to watch the short film and then hear from Miles himself in a live Q&A. So if everyone could go get a drink of water, get a little snack, we'll be back in approximately about 9 minutes, 10 minutes. And again, thank you so much. This is a great conference going along awesome. So we'll see everybody in a few minutes. All right, everyone, welcome back from our little break. We're going to continue with our conference, and I hope everyone got a little refreshed. We got some really exciting things coming up next. Specifically, our keynote speaker, Miles Levine, and we're going to hear from Miles, and then we're going to watch the short film that he wrote and directed, and then we'll have him available for some Q&A after the plays. So hang tight and we'll get that right up to you.
Hey everybody, my name is Miles Levine, and I'm the writer and director of the movie you're about to watch, which is called Under the Lights. And this movie really took me on quite the adventure in becoming more a part of my own community, which is the epilepsy community. I was diagnosed at a very young age with epilepsy, and I had an experience that is not unlike many people living with epilepsy, which is to say that I felt very trapped in that ambiguous void that is not really feeling like a child anymore, not really feeling like an adult, and watching the world kind of move on without me. I felt as though there were just a lot of experiences that I was never going to have. And I felt like epilepsy stole something from me. I felt as though I had lost a lot to my epilepsy. And when I was given the opportunity to start being more a part of my community, I refused the call to adventure, which is to say, I was asked if I wanted to go to epilepsy camp. And I said, no, absolutely not. I don't want to spend any more time thinking about the stuff that brings me down. You know, I was doing a pretty good job of trying to be more than my epilepsy, but I went and I learned something really important, which is I started to hear the stories of the people around me. I started to learn that despite how common epilepsy is, the stigma is brutal. I also started to notice a problem as I attended galas and awareness events, which is that there was this cry, this outcry for the end of stigma, but no real plan to get it done. I started to notice that every time we talk about epilepsy stigma, every time we talk about epilepsy awareness, we're talking to rooms of people who already know. The school bully, the employer who's ready to turn us away. They're never going to buy a ticket to these events. And as long as that's the case, we're always going to have epilepsy stigma. And as long as we have epilepsy stigma, I think we will continue to have the reality that we are not facing the whole picture. And something that I like to say is that epilepsy is more than seizures. Seizures are the punctuation in the epilepsy story. It's the time lived between seizures that is the epilepsy experience. And in a world in which the suicide rate for people living with epilepsy is astronomical compared to the national average, I think that it's time that we face the reality that we can't wait until the cure for that to be taken care of. And while most people have no say in the research and the fight for the last seizure, everyone has a say in the fight against epilepsy stigma. So I'm a filmmaker. And although I had been encouraged to make a movie about my experience living with epilepsy, I refused that call to adventure as well. And after going to camp and hearing the horror stories, I said, wait a second. All these kids, they can't talk about it, but I can talk about it. So I'm going to be a little brave and I'm going to write that movie that I don't want to write. And that is the movie you're going to see. It's Under the Lights. It's about a boy with epilepsy who's so desperate to feel like a regular kid, he goes to prom knowing the lights will make him have a seizure. I wanted to tell a universal story that the general public would watch. I acknowledged that although we're never going to get the general public to show up to our fundraisers, we sure can get people to show up to movies. We need a way to get the message out to people where it's their idea, where they actually want to show up, where they want to buy a ticket and they don't have to be asked. And that's what movies do well. Now, if you enjoy this movie, know that I made the full-length movie, the Hollywood movie, the big stars, Golden Globe winning actors in the full-length Under the Lights movie. So if you love this, and you can go watch it on YouTube later, go to underthelightsfilm.com, put in your email, and we're, if this movie can really take off, it'll be the biggest moment for epilepsy awareness of all time, but only if we talk about it. So please enjoy the movie. Go to underthelightsfilm.com after, and I will be virtually joining you for questions and answers afterward. So thank you so much, and enjoy the flick.
Hello?
Please tell me this is the boys' room.
Okay, time to go.
Hey, is your hair wet?
Get out.
I can't.
Jesus. Come on. Ah! Oh my god!
Ow!
Okay.
I dislocated my shoulder.
I'll call somebody.
No,
I'll
don't.
call like an ambulance
No,
or
please
something.
don't.
I'm so sorry.
Don't.
I'm so sorry.
Do you know Shelby Powell? Can you go tell her that I'll be right out? And I didn't forget.
What's your emergency?
Yeah, this guy hurt his shoulder. Yeah, I think he needs help.
Hang up.
Are they
Hang up.
responding?
Yeah, he said he dislocated it.
Come on, hang up!
Why are you in here?
What's the address? Ma'am? Hello?
Please go talk to Shelby. She's saving a dance for me. Please, no ambulance. Look, I got this, I got this.
What? Stop! Stop! Stop!
They'll call my mom.
Are you kidding me?
I'm really not supposed to be here.
In the girls' bathroom. Imagine that.
At prom.
What? Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Stop! 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 Stop!
I got it.
What is your name? Do you even go here?
Your mascara's running.
So, my boyfriend making out with someone.
Sorry.
So? How many beers did it take to get you into the girls' bathroom?
I don't drink. I have seizures. blindfold. I thought it would help with the lights. I guess not. You can't tell anyone. You can't tell anyone, please.
Of course.
She's saving a dance for me.
Why don't you just hang here for a bit? Wait, no. Wait, please come back. Wait, no, stop. If you stay in here, I'll talk to you.
Sam?
I gotta go, Mom.
Do you want to tell me where? Sam. Sam, will you tell me where you're going?
Hang up. No.
Sam, tell me it's not dangerous.
911, please state your emergency.
Okay. This guy's having a seizure.
Just make sure he's breathing and don't
They'll
restrain
call
him,
my
okay?
mom.
Sam?
Check to see if he's carrying any epilepsy medication.
It would kill her. It'll kill her.
What is your location?
We're at Sullivan Valley High.
An ambulance should be there within 3 minutes. Stay where you are, okay?
They say that they'll be here in 3 minutes. What do I do?
Just be here.
Why would you go to prom if you knew that the lights would make you have a seizure?
Because it's worth it.
A dumb dance is worth having a seizure?
Yeah.
Hey, it's okay. It's okay.
I just want to be normal. One time. Once.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You didn't know.
I pulled the fire alarm. We've been together for 3 years and I couldn't take it. I'm sorry.
You can't just leave like a normal person.
I wouldn't blame you if you hated me for it.
It's kind of awesome, actually.
What?
It's badass. What's a breakup story like that?
You're gonna have a seizure no matter what at this point, right? Do you want to go to prom with me? It's okay. It's okay. But only if you want to. You don't have to.
Could I borrow your phone? Hey, Mom. I know you're probably scared. I went to prom, Mom. Just like everybody else. It's just hard. I don't want to get hurt, but I'm tired of missing out. I know I'll never be a normal kid. But at least I don't have to wonder.
What an amazing short film. That is amazing. And now we're very honored to have Miles Levine on himself, and we can take some questions and answers um, from all the attendees. But I think, Miles, you wanted to give a shout out too before we start taking some questions and answers.
Hi, I'm Miles Levine himself. As I've been introduced, I'm really honored to be here. This is really special, and I think the biggest reward of all of this work has been getting, as I said before, getting to be more integrated into my community, getting to be part of my community and to feel like, the experience of living with epilepsy is has been for something, Um, One thing I'd like to do first is I want to just give a shout out. I try to do so whenever I have the mic, is a shout out to UCB, who's done a pretty incredible job at utilizing this and using it as a tool to further the mission of epilepsy awareness, putting it in the hands of people who have a voice. And we've seen some pretty incredible work out of that. And they furthermore came aboard to help make the full-length movie happen, which I'll discuss. Um, is somebody making of giving me what they call the spotlight? Because I keep end up with this big window staring at my own mug. I keep turning it off. And so, they really led the pack with this, and I'm forever grateful for that. So I try and give them props every time that I have the opportunity. It's a pretty extraordinary group of people. So anyway, we'll do some questions and answers, but first I'd like to outline a little bit of what I learned in doing this. The film really had a response that I couldn't believe. This movie was shot in 2018. That was a while ago. Most short films have a life of, they play some film festivals, if you're lucky, it plays a few theaters, and then it ends up on YouTube and it just sort of sits there. And this movie continues to screen and make a difference, some 7+ years after it was made, which I think is really a testament to how meaningful it is for people with epilepsy in particular to see themselves on screen. Because we've been wronged by cinema and television for a very long time. And yes, we like to talk about the archaic beliefs, behind epilepsy stigma, all the way back to the ancient Greeks, as they say. But the truth is, I think this gets reinforced a lot by what we see in horror movies and television shows, hospital shows, that's the public point of reference. And so no wonder they want nothing to do with us. I think that there's a great deal of precedent for scary conditions that people still have a lot of empathy for. Consider Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is far better funded than epilepsy has ever been. We have a long way to go if we're to ever receive that much public support. There's a great deal of empathy behind Alzheimer's. There's a great deal of, wow, that must be hard. I don't personally go through that, but that must be hard. That tends to be how people deal with it. It's not how people deal with epilepsy. It's because of these hospital movies and these horror shows. Hospital shows and horror movies. So the question I asked is, what if the public's point of reference was not what they saw on House, but what they saw, but Sam? What if they thought of Sam? And what if they looked at Sam and they said, I've felt those feelings. I've felt lost, alone, and misunderstood. I think that's enough. There's a lot of people doing great work getting the education out there, doing great work getting seizure first aid done. And yes, it's a slow battle, but it's getting done. In my mind, the biggest chunk of that pie for ending epilepsy stigma, very simply put, is empathy. And we have to build that. And that's hard to do with pamphlets alone. So for example, what UCB figured out is, well, what if when we gave the pamphlets, we also showed the short? We also made people watch the short. And it's helping. And we've seen fan art from around the world. I got sent paintings of these characters from Budapest the other day. It's wild. And that young lady did not have epilepsy. It just meant something to her. So we went on to make the Hollywood movie. I say Hollywood loosely, but we had Golden Globe and Emmy winning actors playing an epileptologist, playing, the people in Sam's life. And that movie is done, and we're getting that out there, and it's already winning awards, and people are connecting with it. And so my mission was, is it that crazy to believe that we could have the biggest moment for epilepsy awareness of all time? Because events like this one make a difference, but they last for a couple hours. Movies are forever, but only if we keep them alive, and only if we talk about them, and only if we make sure that our friends and family see them. So that's been my mission. And in the process, I've very much felt like, my seizures have sort of been a down payment on something a little more worthwhile. And that's something that I wish for all people with epilepsy, is to find a way to invest themselves into something that makes them feel like getting out of bed in the morning, and make something that's bigger than them. And that certainly has improved my life greatly. So that's the skinny. And we can open it up to questions. I imagine Michael might have actually intended to ask me something else. He asked me one question, and I just sort of ran with it, as I tend to do. I ramble. So yeah, that's my bit.
Well, Miles, thank you so much. This is Irene Rogers. I'm from one of the agencies of the Epilepsy Coalition. And Mike has put me in charge of asking the questions
Okay.
and having you field them. So, I mean, thank you just doesn't seem to be enough. This is incredible. Not only the fact that you shared the short with us and that it is now made into a full-length feature film, but you also have a premiere, an opening tonight, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, I am showing. I'm this today is the big day where I'm showing it in a private screening for my friends, my family, many members of the cast and the crew who have never seen it. My whether it was a good decision or not, I never allowed my parents to see this stuff until it comes out, which I think this one's hitting them a little harder. So it's a big deal, it's sort of like a wedding, it's like that, it's that moment, rare moment where everybody comes together to support you, and I'm mixed feelings on that. It's pretty special. So
Mm.
big day.
Huge day. And the fact that you gave of yourself today, your time, and your creation. We
Oh, totally. This
truly
is what it's
appreciate
for.
that. We are so grateful. There are a number of comments and questions in the chat, so I'll just go through them. But I think the thing that resonated certainly with me was your statement of the time lived between seizures,
Mm,
the epilepsy experience. And I think a lot of people on this call have connected with that. It's so meaningful, so true. It's, outside, the seizures in and of themselves are a lot to contend with, but then it's also all of the other things in between, the social, the emotional, um, financial, all of those things that occur in between. Um, so someone wrote, "Thank you, Miles. I'm already crying." I look forward to seeing the whole film. Um, Someone else saw it after they had brain surgery because they found it accidentally. They had some time on hand. So a happy accident, I suppose. Someone commented that they watched this film the day after the first tonic-clonic seizure they ever had.
whoa.
Since having brain surgery earlier this year in June. I can't describe the bliss, recognition, and triumph I felt after watching it. It was
Wow.
completely worth it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's incredibly meaningful. How many filmmakers get to hear something like that ever? That's really special. Thank you.
Just bear with me. I seem to be having trouble with the chat. Okay. Your movie has inspired me to go back and finish writing the book I started 3 years ago.
Amazing.
This is about this person's journey with intractable epilepsy. Thank you.
That's always been what I hope for, is that it leads to more, right? That's I say, like, I'm not gonna end the stigma, but everybody else will, maybe hopefully be motivated.
My thanks for the movie and best wishes for the premiere. You are speaking for us, the mostly silent majority of those with epilepsy. We could be as brave as you and share our lives and experiences. May God bless you. So we often talk about giving a voice for people who maybe don't have an opportunity or maybe aren't sure how to share what their experience is, and the fact that you have taken your creativity, your ability, and have produced vehicles to give us all a voice. So someone asked, where did you study? Oh, you're muted. How poor Miles got muted.
Yeah, sorry. That was actually my fault. So that's actually part of my journey. So, in high school, I was under this, I'm gonna go to film school and all this stuff, and it just wasn't realistic, at the time. So I went to my local junior college, and I had started making films in high school. I was very motivated, very ambitious. I was making stuff that was far above my, ability. And that was really I'd like to say I'm self-taught, but the reality is I did take classes at the JC that um I I think that what the advancement there was is that I was surrounded by people who had similar goals, and I was sort of able to draft them onto my team. So when I was making stuff in the summertime and, eventually making this, I had people to turn to. So, finding the tribe. So I did not have a traditional education. I don't have a degree in anything. Um, but it seems to be working out okay.
Indeed. How can we support your work? This is the first time I have seen the perspective of someone with epilepsy. Thank you.
That's really, really kind. I am trying to raise the capital to promote the feature. That's a bit of an ambitious thing. I'm looking for companies and such that, might be interested in, just as I said, as people have used the short to, further their message and increase the potency of their awareness work. I hope to do the same thing with the feature. So, we call that the educational rights, making that available. But on a even more impactful level, talk about it. If this meant something to you, show it to someone. It's on YouTube. It's freely available. Anyone can watch it. And get people excited for the feature. There's a website. It's called underthelightsfilm.com. Maybe we can put that in the chat. Underthelightsfilm.com. And at the very bottom there, you can put your information in, and that allows me to hit you up when the big movie is available or when big news happens, when there's an update. That's the big move. So please, find ways to get the short into the world, tell people, and get your name on the list so that I can call on you when the full movie's out. So I'm gonna.
I did put it in the chat, but if you want to do it again, can't hurt, because there have been a number of comments and questions along the way, so it might have been put up on higher level in the chat. Someone asked, what was the hardest part of making this movie?
Hard. It's all hard. It's all hard. I'd love to tell people that this is just so much fun, and it's not really. Some people have fun. I find it to be very stressful. It's not really something that makes sense for someone with epilepsy to do. And the only reason that I can really do it is that I'm surrounded by people who want to see me win, which is, I think, easier when you're trying to do something important, right? And people think that directing is all about, oh, choosing the costume, choosing the shot, having a vision. Like that's about 5% of it. Most of it is pivoting when there's issues, putting out the fires and stuff like that. So it's a high stress position. Uh, it's also very slow. There's a lot of enthusiasm behind this project. You're seeing the chat. How many people speak that way about any movie? And yet raising the money for the full length movie, to do production, to make it a concrete thing took years. Years. I was on the phone every day, all through the week, trying to get someone to do something. And it was exhausting. I remember giving up and buying a lottery ticket and just slowly scratching it off. Like, again, I'm sitting on the biggest moment for epilepsy awareness in history, and the best I've heard is good luck. We love it. It's going to be great. It'll happen, Miles. It'll happen. And nobody's brave enough to be the reason, right? And that's where, UCB came in and at least led that charge, right? Led that charge. So uh, I have to go back into that probably to do things like get the trailer made and things like that. But that's the hardest part. The hardest part is selling people on it. And it shouldn't be that hard. It should not be very hard. I'm gonna put my
Sharing that
name.
it's, it's a lot of trial and tribulation along the way.
Yes. I'm gonna put my email in the chat, and everyone's free to contact me. There's the Instagram for those of you who use it, and Facebook, and that's if you type in Under the Lights Film, you can see stuff and get updates and reach me there as well.
Terrific. So someone commented that they're a high school intern and they're advocating for epilepsy, and couldn't agree more that it's so important for high schoolers and teens with epilepsy to know that they're not alone. And they thanked you for making the film. And it kind of just led to a question for me. The film, is it appropriate for, I'm assuming it's appropriate for teen audiences, since it's, about the prom, and teenagers. And, but, is that the age group that, like late teens and older, or?
You mean as far as like content restrictions?
Mhm.
And for the feature?
Yes.
I'd say the feature's firmly PG-13, but parents make the call. It's not my call. We had at the latest film festival where we showed it, just 10-year-olds showing up and they love it. They love it, and it means a lot to them, and it's there's also an argument to be made for, you know, give them access to feeling seen as early as possible, right?
Right.
But that's not my call to make. That's just how I feel. That is not my call.
Noted. Okay, so I know you provided your contact information. So one of the questions that was asked is, what are some things that help you get through every day?
Well, it's been a great deal easier having purpose. What's cool about this is not a one-off thing. Like this is forever part of my life. Filmed what you saw 7 years ago. 7 years ago. This is my position. I get on planes and I go places and I show it, and ideally they pay for the travel and whatnot, and ideally it pays the rent, but that's what I do. That's a really cool job for someone like me, you know? I could be standing around selling sandwiches somewhere, and maybe that's good work and maybe that would take care of me. There's not saying anything bad about that work, but I don't know how fulfilling that would be. And so I found something fulfilling pretty early in my life. I look a lot younger than I am, I will also admit that. Um, but that gets me through every day. There's a reason to get up in the morning. Not every day is a great day, but and admittedly my health has improved over time, but this condition will impact me forever. There are things that I will never do, but this adventure has taken me places that I've never thought possible.
Thank you. So a comment, I give Miles a lot of credit for what he's achieving and completing the film that you've produced. And then there was another question, do the actors in the full-length feature have any connections to epilepsy?
Totally.
Before being in Under the Lights?
Yeah, absolutely. Pierce has been a tremendous advocate for the community. He's been deeply ingrained into the community and become a very passionate advocate, and carrying the torch for this is extremely important to him. My whole rule was I'm not pressing record until I feel like I'm looking myself in the mirror, until that feels like me, until no part of the performance feels unjustified or inauthentic, and he was able to do that. It's an extremely tall ask of an actor to also care that much about not just the material, but the people behind it. So he's sort of an adoptee. Lake Bell, her daughter has epilepsy. She's a parent of someone with epilepsy. It's a very one-to-one thing. Tanzin Crawford, who will be seen in the new Game of Thrones, who's the co-lead in the feature, her sister has seizures. So it's all very, very, very personal. However, I think it would have been a tremendous mistake to go through and say everyone in this project has to have a connection to this, or it's, or it's wrong, or it's inauthentic, or whatever. I think that's a horrid thing to do. And the reason is because take a room like this one. I think everybody's here because they have a connection to epilepsy. Nobody here is making the transition from epilepsy, what's that, to, oh goodness, I care so much about epilepsy. You're here because you already care. This is great for education. Respectfully, this does not do a lot for stigma. Until we get the general public to show up in the room and want to be there for their own selfish reasons, that's the only way to attack this thing. And so it's very important to me to have a cast and a crew that is a mix and is full of people who have no connection to this, have never encountered this, but they feel the opportunity to be a part of something important and to use their time and their skills to make a difference. And in the process, become epilepsy advocates. And I think that that's a service. So I went out of my way to make sure it was a mix. We also had, extras come to the prom scene from across the country because they did not get to be in prom because of their seizures. They were turned away or it was not a thing they could do. And they got to go to prom. They got to be in the scene and be in the movie, So it's a mix and by design.
Thank you, Miles. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. But if you'll note in the chat, there are tons of comments thanking you and just so grateful for the work you have done. And I would just like to add in, reference to the work to be done going forward to eliminate the stigma associated with epilepsy. It does have to go beyond these walls of this Zoom meeting. And that is part of the work that we do of the Epilepsy Coalition. And one of the things is we go into schools and we provide education for the students and the teachers. And this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to promote this film. We can certainly show the short, but we will show we'll encourage people to go see the film. And you'll note in the comments or the chat that some people want to find out how they can get it in their area.
Please.
So you are going to get a lot of contact, I believe, from this group. And then certainly we will spread the word throughout New York.
Amazing. Thank you. And I hope to bring the feature to the area. It's very helpful when people put their information at the bottom of the website so we can see where the interest lies, and that tells us where to start. right? We hope to get it everywhere, but that tells us where to start. So if you want to expedite a screening in your area, that's the thing to do. So
Terrific. Thank you.
Miles, thank you so much again for getting up early and joining us and before your premiere tonight. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had a bus full of people and some other people meeting us at the Buffalo Film Festival, and it was very well received. And I'm so looking forward to seeing it myself. I was not able to go, but I can't wait to see the full length feature. So
and
thank you again.
Because of your efforts, we won that festival. So I want to give a big thank you, a big thank you. So it was
Awesome.
very, very good for the film. Thank you. I was very honored.
Well, it's been an honor for you to be on it's been an honor for me to have you on as a keynote for this conference. And we're going to go to our last segment of the conference for today. And it's the advocacy panel and a Seizure Safe School emphasis. And we have some really awesome panelists that are going to be participating in this today. First, we have Deborah Stevensd. She is the director at Greenberg Traurig. I can never say that. Traurig. And also, she is a mom of a kiddo with epilepsy. We have Sherry Gibbs. Sherry Gibbs is a school nurse and also a mom of a kiddo with epilepsy. I think Sarah is coming on or is already on. We got to find her. She's going to be on. She's an epilepsy advocate. And Dr. Josiane Lejoie, she's going to also join this panel. And so each one of the panelists are going to take a turn and talk a little bit about what their efforts are, what they've done. And we're going to start out with Deborah. We also have a little some slides from her too to start out with. And I appreciate you guys being on. And if anybody has questions throughout the panel, please don't hesitate, put them in the chat and we can get to your questions. So thanks again, and here we go. So Deborah, take it away.
Hi, everyone. So nice to see all of you, and it's really such an honor to join you today. Again, I'm Deb Stevensd. I am with Greenberg Traurig. I am part of their government law and policy practice in Albany. I am by day a lobbyist, so I do a lot of work in various spaces. I represent clients, large corporate clients. I do utility work, I do technology work, housing, but I also do represent not-for-profits, both small and large. So I focus my work specifically for the Epilepsy Coalition of New York State on seizure safe school legislation. I also do represent the Epilepsy Foundation of Northeastern New York. So in my work in advocating for the foundation, it's mostly funding. My not-for-profit work really focuses a lot on funding. Kudos to all of you that work for nonprofits. I recognize it's an incredibly challenging situation right now, specifically with the federal government. So, you know, I'm really so in awe of all the work that you do and appreciate it. But most importantly, I am the parent of a child who's now an adult with epilepsy. My son, Ben, was diagnosed when he was 15. He is now at the University of Vermont, living his best life. So we've been very fortunate. He's had really great care. He still, you know, struggles a little bit here and there, but I have to say he is my hero. So I'm able to advocate for people that are living with epilepsy, not only as a lobbyist, but also as a mom. And I think I'm a little biased, but moms make the best lobbyists in the world. So I'm going to talk a little bit about seizure safe school legislation. And we're going to start with just giving you sort of like the 30,000-foot view of what this issue is nationally. So if you could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So to date, 24 states and Washington, D.C. have something on the books that make requirements for seizure awareness and response training in schools. So New York State, you know, is sort of lagging in that respect. Model legislation that is put forth by the Epilepsy Foundation contains five main components. The first is requiring training for school personnel, mandates that a seizure action plan be kept on file, delegation of authority to administer emergency medication, and then an awareness program that it be incorporated into the curriculum to try to address some of the stigma that we've all been talking about. So next slide, please. Thank you. So for New York, while there has been an effort underway for years at this point, we still do not have anything on the books that makes any requirements in public schools, so K through 12 public schools in New York State, requiring training. And so there's some information on the left on that slide that gives you a little bit of perspective in terms of what this sort of looks like and how it presents in schools in New York State. So 26,000 plus kids are living with epilepsy. It's the third most common school emergency. I think the bottom two, or no, rather the 1,007 students per school nurse in New York, that's a very important number. Sherry's going to talk more a little bit about that. And then 11 or more days are missed on average in a year for students living with epilepsy. So looking at a state that has nothing on the books in terms of a law that makes any requirement to train their teachers or their building staff to recognize seizures, and looking at those statistics is obviously very, very troubling. The responsibility generally is with the school nurse and the volunteer organizations that are found throughout the state, that most of you are affiliated with in some way, are the ones that are talking to the teachers and school personnel to give them the training and to manage, the care of the students that are in the building. Importantly, not every school has a full-time school nurse, nor are they required to have one. And that's not something that we're going to try to fix with this bill. I would love to, but we will certainly support those efforts. There is legislation out there. And also schools lack the proper tools to address the stigma, and really to Miles' point, the stigma's out there, and unless it's a requirement that people have to learn about this in some way, they aren't going to seek out the information on their own. So it's very important that that be incorporated into the curriculum. So we have a bill that was introduced by Pat Fahey and Chantel Jackson that incorporates four of these main components. So it would require that a seizure action plan for every student diagnosed with epilepsy be kept on file with the school nurse. And I think it's safe to say that most students with epilepsy already have a seizure action plan, so this is sort of an easy thing to do. It would mandate that all public school districts provide seizure recognition and response training to school staff. It requires that every school building have at least one person, in addition to the school nurse, trained in the administration of emergency rescue medication, but also that does include the use of children that have devices and would need to utilize a magnet. So it would make that requirement. And then finally directs the state education department to develop a seizure awareness program incorporated into the curriculum for all students. So that's just sort of a summary of what the bill does. And unfortunately, I only have 5 minutes to talk, so I could talk about this for hours. So really, this is the meat of what I want to get to today, the advocacy efforts in New York State. So getting a bill done in New York is incredibly difficult. Getting a bill passed that tries to amend the scope of practice for a particular profession is even more difficult. And in addition to that, getting a bill done that tries to impose mandates on teachers makes it very, very hard. So those are the two pieces of the bill that are really very difficult. And so that's what sort of the hurdles that we're trying to clear through stakeholder engagement, building support, and then also I will get to how can all help. So stakeholder engagement, what we have done is, after getting the bill introduced, that's sort of the easier part, is getting a bill introduced in New York State. The hard part is identifying your champion. And so for us, we are very, very lucky that we have two wonderful champions. Senator Pat Fahey, who's out of Albany, and then Chantel Jackson, who's out of New York City in the Assembly. They both have a personal connection with epilepsy. So they are not just members of the legislature that are well-versed in these topics and are, sitting on the various committees. Although Pat is the chair of the Disabilities Committee, they have a personal connection and can speak to all of the difficulties that students encounter and be a wonderful voice in the state capitol on the bill and help us get it over the finish line. So really a lot of our work has been meeting with the different groups that really have a seat at the table. So in order for this bill to get done, it will need to pass out of the Education Committee in both houses. And so in order for that to happen, the chairs of those committees and leadership will make sure that the stakeholders that are really focused on this bill, so that would be the teachers unions, the Nurses Association, the other associations that represent the various personnel that are in the building, so principals, superintendents, that they are at the very least neutral on the bill. So it's our job to get them there. And so we've already started meeting with those groups, working through the language in the bill, trying to come up with amendments that might address their concerns and getting them to a comfortable spot so that when the chairs of the committee go to them and say, we want to put this on agenda and we want to move it, they aren't going to be an obstacle to those efforts. So building support, in addition to engaging with the various stakeholders, external stakeholders, obviously building support in both houses. That's something that I primarily do just in my conversations with the various members of the Senate and the Assembly. And with the governor, ultimately, we will have to engage with her and her team on this. It's building support. Last year, we had a wonderful opportunity to have a advocacy day in Albany. So we organized to have a group of, some of you were there, a group of students and folks that are in schools and doing the, frontline works that human services agencies do on this. We came to Albany, we met with all of the members that sit on the Education Committee, had some great conversations, shared some really, really good stories. And I think that is the most important part of building the support. And I think through that day and then subsequent conversations that have taken place, I think everybody was a little bit surprised, some more so than others, that most people have a connection to epilepsy. And it's finding that connection, and that's how you get the buy-in. And that's sort of a lobbying philosophy that I live by, not just on issues related to this, but anything else. I'm passionate about what I do, whether it's something related to an issue for a corporate client or a very large association or even a local government. Finding the connection with people, getting their support on issues for whatever reason there is, and sort of making the light bulb go off. Is what we're there to do. So we had a wonderful day last year, which takes me to what can all of you do? And so I would say that a lot of the work that needs to happen between now and next session is outreach that can be done by any of you in connecting with your local assembly member, your local senator, asking them to co-sponsor the bill. Set up a meeting. Don't be shy. You're a constituent. They're there to do the work for you. And so set up a meeting, a call, talk with them about the bill and why it's so important. Invite them, to your agency, to your school, or you can go into their district office and spend some time with them. That's, advocacy 101, I would say, and it's the most effective. Or you can join us on Lobby Day. We're going to be having our Lobby Day in, I think it's March. I think the date is March. We'll have to share all of that information with you later and come to the Capitol and join me and a large group of people as we try to continue to, move this bill along hopefully get it on an agenda for next year. And, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Bills don't get done in 1 year, sometimes not even 2. It takes a while, but that's how sort of the good work is done that way, because then you have the support from the larger community and face fewer obstacles when you're nearing the end, and a bill is, on the governor's desk. So I think I'm going to hand it over to Sherry. Is that right? Or
Yep,
do we?
That's right. Sherry's next.
And then we do questions at the end. Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, Sherry.
You're muted.
Okay, there. Now let me unmute myself. All right. Hi, guys. My name's Sherry. I am both the mom of a kiddo with epilepsy and also a school nurse. And I've been working alongside the coalition to advocate for the Seizure Safe School legislation. Back in May, as Deb mentioned, I was able to attend Legislative Advocacy Day in Albany, and that Deb and some of the other coalition members were there. And I've also been a part of some of the meetings with stakeholders like the New York State chapter of the National Association of School Nurses. But as Deb said, advocacy doesn't have to start that big. It can be really simple. Another thing that I did was just what she mentioned. I actually got onto my assemblyman's website. I used an online contact form, gave him the bill number, explained to him why it was so important to me, and asked that he support that bill by co-signing, and he did. And it was a really simple and easy conversation. So I would strongly encourage you to do that. I wanted to take some time today to share with you guys both the personal and professional reasons that I've become so passionate about pushing for this change. And just to kind of give you guys some context, I am not employed as a school nurse at my child's school, and I actually wasn't a school nurse yet when he started having seizures. So my son's name is Ian. He started having convulsive seizures 3 years ago. He was 10 and in 5th grade. And he was eventually diagnosed with intractable epilepsy, and he had more than 20 seizures during his 6th grade year. During that time, I really struggled with how things were being handled at school. I was new to epilepsy too, but it just didn't really seem to be going very well. They weren't timing his seizures appropriately. And at one point, one of his seizures occurred in a classroom where the staff covering didn't even know that he had epilepsy, let alone how to handle and respond to his seizures. He did have a seizure action plan, thanks to his school nurse. More on that later. But for some reason, it just wasn't getting to the people it needed to get to, or wasn't being read all the way through. And so when that seizure happened, where the staff didn't even know that he had epilepsy, they panicked. And obviously when the staff is scared, the students also are scared and panicked. And that day I did have several parents reach out to me saying that their kids came home very upset and worried about their friend. So after that, I had a very serious conversation with the school about the fact that I wanted every staff in the building to have seizure response training. And the reason why this was important was because obviously, even though he had the seizure action plan, that wasn't effective enough. Thankfully, they agreed, and I was able to connect them with Mike from EPI. He came in and did a building level training for them, and it really made a huge difference. So much so that I reached back out to Mike and Sarah over at EPI and said, why isn't this required? Why isn't this a state mandate? And how can I help to change that? Because I really feel like it should be. So now that I'm working as a school nurse, I kind of have another level of support for this legislation. Starting with seizure action plans. As Deb mentioned, these are kind of common practice in school nursing, but they're not consistent across the state. What a seizure action plan is it delineates what that specific student's seizures look like, when or if they need rescue medications, but not every healthcare provider is writing one automatically, and parents often don't know to ask for it. In fact, when Ian had his first seizure, it was his school nurse who said, I need this seizure action plan. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know to ask for it, and the doctor had never mentioned it. And as school nurses, we do our best to take those plans and educate every staff who directly cares for those students with seizures, but it is nearly impossible to reach absolutely everyone. Substitutes, coaches, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and many kids have their very first seizure at school, so nobody knows they have epilepsy and they won't have a seizure action plan. It's also, as Deb mentioned, important to note that school nurses are not required in New York State in every building or at all. So there is no legal mandate for this education to happen, for these seizure action plans to be on file, or to even have nursing staff to share them out and do education in that way. I also think that many people don't realize that seizures often end on their own within just a few minutes. And sometimes, even if there is a nurse in the building, that's before the nurse can get there. And that's why it's critical that the people right there with the student know exactly how to help and keep them safe until help can come. When the training is required by law, it becomes part of the staff member's annual routine and not just an optional extra. So my son's district has now implemented this, and it's really made a huge difference. It's also essential that we educate students. We don't want to forget about them. It doesn't just decrease stigma, which is something we've talked about a lot today, but it also decreases trauma. As all of you are probably aware, even for an adult, watching a seizure happen can be really scary. And when kids understand what's happening and how to respond, it changes the atmosphere from one of fear to one of compassion. And they know that they and their friends are safe, that it's just something that they have to get through. So lastly, another part of the bill that's set to remove a lot of barriers for kids from a school nursing perspective is the part about rescue medication. In New York, other emergency meds like Valtoco and glucagon can be delegated by nurses like myself to non-medical staff. I can train them and give them competency to administer that. This is not the case with most epilepsy rescue medications. So this creates some really big challenges. Many schools don't have full-time nurses, if one at all. So if a student has epilepsy and a field trip or an away game comes up, they might have to go without their medications, skip the event, or if a parent can come, sometimes that's a solution. But this can also impact where a child can even attend school, because if a building doesn't have a nurse, that student might not be able to safely be placed there because there's no one authorized to give their rescue medication in a timely way. So instead of receiving equitable access to education, they're left with two poor options: either staff call 911 during a seizure that could have been managed on site, or the child that is excluded from that environment altogether. So I want to leave you guys with this. Advocacy works. And this is our chance to make school safer for all kids with seizures. So reach out.
Awesome. Thank you, Sherry. And next we're going to move on to Sierra, and Sierra is going to tell her story, and she is an epilepsy advocate for sure. Go ahead, Sierra.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's so nice to talk to all of you. So my name is Sierra Grapp. I'm from Putnam County. I'm 15 years old. I've had epilepsies for the past 6 years of my life-ish. And I've had absence seizures, myoclonic seizures, and focal impaired awareness seizures. So I can explain them, but it makes school really difficult having them. Absence seizures, you can't really tell all the time. They're periods of just, falling unconscious, falling, like unaware. And my teachers never really noticed. It makes things very difficult. I used to have about, in between 100 to almost 200 a day when I was really struggling with my epilepsy. It's fallen more under control now, which is great, but I still, have that struggle in school. And I know I'm not the only kid with it. And we, as at least in my school community, as epileptics, have been struggling with a lot of things, which was mentioned earlier, is really like being allowed to have certain opportunities. So for example, this past year even, so literally just the months of September and October this past year, I've been denied 3 times from going on school field trips because there was no nursing staff available to hold my rescue medication. in case of emergency. So my parents end up being the ones accompanying me, which they only do that because, of course, I'm their daughter. They want to. They want me to have that opportunity, but it's not fair to them either. And I'm also in a lot of after school programs. So for my after school orchestra, for my rehearsals, there is no nursing staff available. The nursing staff leave earlier in the day. Then, in addition to this, there is no training for my teachers. I had to, so I became a part of, so just like background history, I became a part of TSU this past March, which is a program run by the Epilepsy Foundation of America, the Teen Speak Up program. And we went to Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill to advocate, to speak about bills like this, to give our personal stories. And sorry. So through TSU, you know, I learned a lot about advocacy and what it means to have staff trained and what the outcomes, the positive outcomes of that can be. My school staff is not trained. I had to take it into my own hands, and I'm performing a training for my school staff, an optional training. But I have a lot of teachers already signed up for the course on seizure first aid response, because I am not the only student. I've seen many students who have had seizures in school and no one knows what to do. No teacher knows how to respond. No students, for the most part, know how to respond to this. And that's a really big issue in the school system. Now, I can give an example, not at my school, another school close by. A student had a seizure in the locker room. Another fellow student responded to the seizure, and she was a trained EMT. She said that she could give the first response. She was administering first response, turning her on her side, making sure she was okay, trying to find any source of rescue medications. But administration and school nurses came in and turned the student over on her backside, which is absolutely not what you're supposed to do during a grand mal seizure. She could have choked, she could have hurt herself, it could have been very bad for the student. And that's just really why we need like this bill, we need this training. It can save a lot of students. It stops the stigma of just students and teachers being fearful of the event as well. Because when you mention to a teacher, like I have to my teachers, oh, I have epilepsy, they get very concerned and they're like, oh, well, how am I supposed to, care for you? How am I supposed to make sure that this goes well? It gets very difficult. Obviously, epilepsy is personalized and it's a good question. But if they had that background knowledge, it's also a plan. It's also, the strategy that they can keep in the back of their heads. I think that's just like the really important parts of this bill, really, is just like the training, the learning, the education of it all, the education portion of it all. Because every epileptic is still a person. I'm still a kid. I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm in Salem, Massachusetts with some of my friends right now, and I'm still a person. I'm with my parents though. And, I mean, I still go on the field trips because my parents accompany me. I mean, there's a bunch of different things, but it's good. It's always good to remember that you can't you have to be aware that epileptic kids are still kids and they want to have every single opportunity and be in that safe environment as best they can. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. That's awesome. We're gonna wrap up the last panelist presentation before we open it up to everyone on the panel for questions and answers. But Dr. Josiane Lajoie is going to talk, and she is a pediatric epileptologist. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us, and take it away.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Josiane Lajoie. I'm a pediatric epileptologist. I practice mostly in Manhattan and Long Island. The role of a pediatric epileptologist is not necessarily only to diagnose and treat seizures, but I also think that an important role is really being an advocate for the patient and their families. There's so much, as you know, about the stigma, fear when it's dealing with a child with epilepsy, whether it's the child themselves or family members or caregivers. So part of our job is also to try to support the patient and the family as many times in many ways as possible. So I kind of see, especially dealing with the schools, our role is to be a liaison and an advocate for the patient and the family. So, that entails a lot of communication because, as it's been said, you can't count on that. People know what to do for a seizure. Some people don't even know what seizures are. So that's why this legislation is so important. And I feel that we've made such strides where it comes from when it comes to asthma or allergies, but we haven't even made any much progress when it comes to caring for our kids in schools for epilepsy. So that's why this bill and all the efforts from the epilepsy foundations all across New York are so important. And many of the times when we see a patient for the first time, they may not even have known that their child had a seizure. They don't know what a seizure is. And many parents don't know what their rights are when it comes to seizures. So very often it's not until maybe we have a follow-up appointment that they'll say, oh, this patient's not even allowed on the playground. And they just assume that that was the norm. So, so we spend time not only just with our, prescriptions and ordering tests, but also trying to ensure that that child and that family are leading normal lives with, the proper support. We want our kids to participate in everything, whether it comes to recess or gym, extracurricular activities and sports. So sometimes it just means, some more paperwork and some phone calls, just to make sure that everyone, is, on the same page. And just identifying those kids that require a little bit extra support, um, and that it's not that big of a deal, in terms of, just, as as we said, making sure that people have a seizure action plan, that people know what to do in terms of seizures, because, there's, again, many teachers feel very comfortable with an EpiPen, or even, people in schools now have Narcan, for kids with potential, fentanyl or opioid overdoses, but people really are not equipped in order what to do with a seizure. And, most likely a child might have a seizure more so than have an opioid, we hope, in terms of percentage wise in our schools, especially like the younger kids. So we just want to make sure that families have open communication with their doctors and their nurses, and, teachers and, school nurses.
Thank you so much. Okay. So before we open it up to comments and questions from the chat, I just want to thank you all for being a part of the panel presentation, providing your perspectives, both professional and personal, and a combination of both. And at the heart of it all, you're all advocates, and you're helping us to be better advocates. So with that, there are quite a bit of reaction as far as that New York State. Can't believe that New York State doesn't have a bill or legislation passed in this regard, for seizure safe schools. So we are equally shocked, but we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to make that happen. And 2026 will be the year. Okay, so someone had asked if the lack of seizure safety plans is a violation of IDEA, ADA, and New York human rights law.
Was the question, is the lack of training a violation?
It says seizure safety plans. So I don't know if
if
that's
they're
the seizure action plans or
Yeah.
if it's.
I don't know if they're, which one they're asking about. I'm assuming it's the training probably. If lack of, training teachers is a violation. I don't think any of us can opine on that, quite frankly.
I can give you to the best of my knowledge. I can't promise that it's 110% by the book, but if I'm understanding the question correctly, the only way that seizure action plans would be related to free and appropriate education or a violation of any of those acts would be once that seizure action plan is actually implemented into a 504 or an IEP, then it becomes subject to the IDEA Act. To where right now, no, not having a seizure action plan, it's not required, so there's no violation of anything. Once that seizure action plan is obtained and then implemented into an IEP, if that is not followed, then there is a violation there.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So someone commented that they had flyers that have the 4 steps of what to do. And before they left their last school, the nurse and the assistant principal, but the New York City Department of Ed had no idea we had a teacher have a seizure and they had a soft lockdown. I had a seizure after school and called the assistant principal and told him to just catch me and prevent me from hitting the floor. So I think the point of this is that it's oftentimes falling on the student or their families to convey what to do when there's such a resource within the agencies being able to provide an education, a training. And we hope that people will reach out to us because we certainly can try to make some inroads until the legislation is passed. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so then it was also more commentary that, you can ask for an aide to assist a student with seizures, but there's hardly enough teachers. And so it's just a lot of, I think, concern about lack of resources and not being able to, have the needed staffing for what people need.
I'd just like to add a comment on that. And I think we've talked about this a lot as a team. I know Sherry, you've shared the sentiment that a lot of what happens now is reactive. And the purpose of this bill is to implement some measures that are proactive, right? Because I know for my son, his first seizure was in fact at school. It was in gym class. And it was over by the time the nurse got there, but I can assure you, because I've seen the video, nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what to do. And so, it solves for that problem, that in that sort of instance, when a child does have their first seizure in a school building, people will at least have an awareness. They might not remember all the steps and, know exactly what to do, but there will at least be an awareness of what it is.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay. Is there a plan to advocate to include funding in the New York State budget for required training if it becomes law? And then a follow-up to that, if any of the agencies of the Epilepsy Coalition or the national affiliations of the National Epilepsy Foundation and Epilepsy Alliance have the needed funding to offer the training to no cost to the schools. So we currently do offer the training at no cost, and that is the beauty of this. We are not asking for funding. We are just asking for access and to be able to mandate the training. I would say that probably 99% of all of our education programs and trainings throughout the coalition are free of charge. And most definitely the ones that are offered in the schools are free.
Right. And those are two very sort of separate things. I would not attach a funding mandate to this legislation because it would be a bit of a poison pill. It would prohibit the bill from moving forward at all. Those types of measures are generally taken up within the context of the state budget. I work on funding all the time, and for the nonprofits that I do get hired to just solely to get funding for them, that is a budget exercise. It is not legislative. So if we were to be successful in getting the bill, say, out of committee and to the floor of the houses, I can assure you the governor would likely veto it because it would have an appropriation attached to it. So we like to separate those two things. So that's sort of a conversation for after this bill gets enacted. It would be great to see some sort of statewide effort to put some more funding into these programs.
Absolutely. A lot of accolades and thanks. Couple people said, Sierra, you're a rock star. Okay, let's see. Are seizure action plans communicating with professors and nurses the recommended tactics for attending college as well? Are there resources to address the best procedures for that?
So the best procedures for children that are transitioning out of high school into a college environment, is that the question?
I believe so.
Okay.
That's definitely a Deb question.
Yeah, so I can speak about that, taking off my professional hat and putting my mom hat on. I think that, this is a space where there's a lot of work to be done in this area in terms of advocacy, but also, building community. And it's something that I'd actually like to focus on. I'm on the board of the Foundation for Northeastern New York. And I'd like to sort of build that community. So for kids like my son who are in college and are trying to manage all of the different challenges of being, on their own for the first time, independent, seeking out community, because we know that's what keeps them safe. And so there isn't anything formal, I don't think. If you'd like to message me, I don't know who asked that question. If somebody could put my contact information in the chat, that would be great. Reach out to me because I do have a list of resources, Facebook groups that are incredibly successful and wonderfully supportive that I'm a part of. People find each other. I mean, that we all know that, right? You find each other. And so there is a group, hundreds of us, parents that have kids that are in college and have epilepsy. And we have all sorts of different tricks up our sleeve to make that journey a little bit easier. But, there isn't anything sort of, formal. I think that's offered to help kids transition. Something I think there's space for, and I'd love to work on that.
If I could just add, when we deal with kids in the office, transitioning to college is something that, we often talk about like in middle school, right? So, this shouldn't be a conversation to be had, in July when kids are heading off to college in August, because, we want to make sure that, everyone is on the same page, right? And that the parents and the child are actually thinking intentionally about the school, where they should go, what might be the best fit. And that's really a lot of that is individual, right? On the child and on the family. And also looking out for, different aspects in education, right? Colleges, I've seen some great colleges who they actually have emergency, almost kind of like alarms through the college that if they see someone having a seizure, they could, alert faculty. And then there are some colleges who claim that they've never had someone who've had seizures. So again, looking at those kinds of aspects when you're looking for a college for your individual student. And again, in terms of having accommodations in place, you want to make sure that those things are addressed, whether it's, avoiding a, noisy dorm, like, because if, they're sleep deprived and that can affect their seizures. These are a couple of extra steps that might need to happen, but when you're having open communication, these things can be settled, pretty, swiftly.
Yeah, there's a lot of pre-work that goes into sending a kid off to college. And I think importantly too, there's a legal component there. Of course, if your child is 18, you do have to complete some paperwork and take over, power of attorney for them in the case that they do have a seizure and they are in the hospital and are not conscious, that you can be spoken to by the doctors and you can be part of that medical conversation. So there's a lot of things that people don't think about that actually, make that experience entirely different from when they were in K through 12. Accommodations are another thing. Navigating that is definitely challenging, but it's all really, really doable. Again, when you find that community, it just makes it so much easier.
Thank you all. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up this panel session and conclude the conference. But if you have a moment to look in the chat, there were a couple of more questions related to employment, as well as adults, and seizure action plans. So if you do have that moment, it would be appreciated. And Mike, it's all you now.
Yes, like Irene just said, thanks so much for those panelists. That was really great information. We got to keep talking about it, like Miles said too, and hopefully make some of this this hard work pay off with the legislation passing hopefully soon. But thank you everyone for attending and being part of our conference today. I'm gonna turn it over to Janine Garib, our Coalition Board President, to give us our closing remarks. But again, thanks so much for everybody for being here.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for spending part of your Saturday with us. We really, really appreciate it. We hope you found today's sessions helpful and inspiring, from the latest treatments in epilepsy and clinical trials to tips for managing intractable epilepsy to real stories of people thriving with self-management programs. A huge thank you to our keynote speaker, Miles Levine, for sharing Under the Lights and reminding us how powerful storytelling can be. And to our amazing advocacy panel, thank you for pushing forward on Seizure Safe Schools. We have to make this happen in 2026. I also want to give a final shout out to SK Life Science. We are so grateful for your support. Don't forget that November is National Epilepsy Awareness Month. Be sure to follow your local organization on social media and help us raise awareness by sharing your story. And remember, the Epilepsy Coalition of New York State and our partners across the state are always here for you. If you haven't connected with us yet, now is a great time to reach out. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we hope to see you all real soon. Thanks.